Well, I'm Reid.
I'm Christian.
And we are Tetelestai. And this is Discography Discussion. Ask me if you got a record.
Oh yeah, Reid wants to know if you got a record.
Yeah, I got the record.
And
I got some bad news for you guys. No, it's no, man. I loved it. We were just listening to it a little bit ago. It's funny because I actually downloaded it, or I downloaded the MP3s from the card, like just today, because I was like, I'm getting ready to leave and drive down. I was like, it's kind of really important that the other guys hear the songs too, and it just totally slipped my mind because back whenever you first hit me up on Twitter, I actually was in the middle of like a 60-hour, 70-hour work week.
Oh, dang.
And so everything was like, because you're like, hey, did you get the record? And I was like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure when I mailed something, because I had a close friend of mine that actually didn't get his copy. And I was like, what's going on with the mail?
Right. Yeah, no, I got it. I mean, it's some heavy stuff, man. Like,
I'm glad you like it. We're just about to we're gonna do some advertising across Metal Sucks and Lamb Goat and all those.
Sweet.
Just to kind of blast out, like no one really knows we exist because we've been intentionally under a rock for so long.
Right.
And so we're just kind of starting to do this whole, like, you know, getting out there, connected, whatever, podcasts, you name it, whatever form of media we can be out there is good. So
very cool.
Anyway, yeah, I'm Reid. Christian is the drummer. We're a two-piece. I don't know if you put that together, but all the sounds on that record are just, that's us. We didn't program bass or bring in a bass player or anything. So everything's us.
That's really cool, man. Yeah, I heard you guys for the first time on As the Story Grows, and I was pretty impressed, and so I was like, yeah, man, I'm gonna go ahead and buy this. And then I I think it was like a few hours after like I had bought the record, and then that's when you sent me a message on Twitter, and I was like, okay, cool,
I think was it you that followed me, and then I was like, who's this guy? And then I went and looked, and I saw you were the same guy that had ordered one, so I was like, cool, I'm gonna send him a message. I was like, I like connecting with everybody, so.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't even introduce ourselves. I'm terrible.
So this is how Dan does it when he is so excited to talk to somebody, he forgets to introduce himself. It's a going trend on the show, so.
Yeah. So I'm.
We got Dan. We got Guy and Guy too.
I'm
Jeff.
That's how I like it.
I'm Joe down in front.
Dan, Jeff, and Joe.
You will spend time seeing me stare off into space. That's just me staring at the computer, making sure everything looks nice.
It's like you're looking at like a fish background on your computer. Just fish going back and forth.
Yeah.
Finding Nemo, finding Dory. Right. Dory's faking. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Wait, that's a legit possibility.
I'm just saying. She's like, I saw a boat, and I'm like, oh, so you're faking. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Exactly.
Dude, I thought that the other day. Like, I got 3 kids, so we watched all that stuff all the time, and like, it's so funny. Like, I was like, she has that memory loss, like when it's convenient, Like,
Yep.
I've been getting messages from people asking us lately. It's like, are you guys like a Christian podcast? We're definitely not, but like but that's where I got my start in music, was in Christian music, and so.
So talk more about that. Like, what do you mean? Like, what did you work with labels or? No,
I was just a music junkie, So like, and I got started off, like when I was younger, and so I got into a lot of like the hardcore and metal and death metal and stuff like that from listening to Christian music. So it's like I've got like this history of like the past almost 20 years now of like listening to all that like really heavy stuff that was Christian. And so like when we started this podcast, it was like, I'm not going to not talk about those bands,
Totally.
We like talking about Christian and non-Christian bands because, we have similar histories with music and, different bands that we've listened to over the years. And
yeah.
Like,
I've got to say, like, because I was never, I I was never like a metal drummer for like a long time, and so one of the first bands that I listened to that were metal in any way was Becoming the Archetype.
Okay.
And the very first album, I was blessed to get their very first album as the starting point, because I actually think that's one of their most creative in terms of like the way the sound is so visceral, like the mix isn't perfect, like the EQs are a little bit like out of whack, the tom,
almost harsh.
Yeah, almost harsh, but it adds this like gritty quality. Like you can almost like feel them playing like right next to you, like even on like crappy speakers. It's kind of weird to like talk about, because then I listen to their next like 3 or 4 albums and everything just sounds, well, with the exception of the one after that.
It's like really polished, yeah.
They're polished, yeah, and I'm just so not in love with the polished sound, especially when it comes to drums. And so whenever I hear like a perfect snare sample 3 or 4 times in a row, I'm just like, I don't know about that. Like it takes me out of it, almost like seeing like a bad lip sync or like a. And
I don't know if that's what they did for sure on their records, but like, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
compared to that first one.
Compared to that first one, it sounds over the top polished, even though it may not be. That's what I'm the biggest fan of, is just that gritty, like almost if you could leave mistakes in, you'd want to, because that's more relatable to me as an honest description of what music does for me.
So you like that raw analog emotion?
Yeah. Yes, not so raw that it's like, oh, we're not going to edit anything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You don't want to go straight like back to the old garage sound, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, I was saying my only claim to fame is Jason Wisdom calling me a douche.
Yeah, we had Jason Wisdom on a few episodes ago, and we were talking about Living Sacrifice. And this is topical because Jeff was complaining about the vocals on Non-Existent. Jason Wisdom just out of nowhere, just good. He like does like the cough douche. Like it was.
I was saying something along the lines about Living Sacrifice is so good that you could show them to your friends and they'd have no clue that it was a Christian band.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. Yeah, we're friends with DJ, and he is also not pleased with the sound of the vocals on there. In fact, we've talked about re-recording and re-releasing a remaster.
Oh, that'd be very cool,
dude.
Because that's the only thing that it was hard for us, just because, or at least for me, it was just because the vocals. I had a hard time.
I'll send you guys pre-order money for that right now.
DJ hates it. Like DJ personally hates it. He was so unhappy with the recording process and how it went that like he's just never been happy with it. So I kind of threw it to him because he was on on our project. Obviously, you've heard it already, and this is the first thing he's been on in 20 years. He said,
"Yeah, since not since Inhabit, right? Like, I mean, it's been that long."
Yeah, he hasn't. I don't think he's guessed on anything, or I mean, according to him, I don't actually know for sure, but I know that he's played live with Living Sacrifice a few times and done some of their older stuff, but not as far as like being actually on a record. So, like the way we did that is I sent him a recording package because he lives in Arkansas and I'm in Nebraska, and I sent him like a box full of like a preamp, a good mic, and step-by-step instructions with a flash drive with like everything he needed. And so it took him a while to get to it.
That's
but once
awesome.
He did,
that's awesome.
It's pretty funny. I had to doctor the recording just a little bit. Like, of course, it wasn't perfect coming back because you just recorded it without a pop, without a reflection filter or anything. So there's a little bit of room sound in there. But so that us doing that kind of spawned the idea of like, I kind of was like, hey man, well, I'd love to take a crack at it because remastering something like that would be so much fun. Like, to segue a little bit, like we talked about it in the As the Story Grows podcast, but one of the ways we got connected with all these people is I actually remastered Give Them Rope from Coalesce.
Yeah, I was very impressed whenever I heard that. I was like, I mean, that record is phenomenal. And
yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. And it was really cool to be able to do that. And I forgot where I was going with this, but
we do that all the time.
Yeah, so I love doing that kind of thing. I love taking old recordings, and that's kind of I just started when I first got into it like a decade ago. I was just like I'd hear a record, some like lesser known bands, and I'd be like, man, this is great music, but it just lacks so much of just that, not just volume. We're not talking just volume, like loudness, but just legibility, I guess, just
that live sound, that fullness of what they could, like, you could tell the extremity in what they're playing, but it's not coming across that way in the medium,
Right.
Yep. And that's the thing that I would try to fix. And so I just kind of got into that and tinkering with that. But so anyway, who knows if that'll happen? Lots of ideas, but there is a possibility of that. And so
that'd be
that might happen. The re-record and the re-release and remaster of that.
Oh
so.
my God, that would be.
Am I allowed to tell people about that? Because it might make it into the opening of the show.
I'm going to text DJ right now and I'll ask him.
All right.
Tell him also. Well, no, I'll contact him. I follow him on Twitter. Well, because so we complained a lot about, like, it wasn't like straight up shit talk about his vocals, but I was like, man, after all that stuff we said about his vocals on Non-Existent, I don't know if he'd even want to talk to us.
Said, like,
yeah.
You got puppy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He would probably agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah, that was why I was totally distracted earlier. She was hanging out over here, but she was off camera.
Well, I'll definitely hit him.
cutie.
I'll definitely hit him up then. So I'm always real nervous. Like what was one of the first bands we talked about was Mortification, and we were not like very nice.
You can say kind. We weren't
kind on some of the stuff, but it was one of those, like, once we started talking to people, I was like, oh, maybe we should get that guy to come talk to us sometime. And then I was like, oh, I don't know, man. After what we said, like, because that's part of what we do. We're critical. We're still critical music listeners. So like, if something's not good, we're gonna say it. But I mean, it's still our opinion. If somebody disagrees with it, that's fine.
Here's the great thing about. I never took music appreciation, but I always loved the fact that people thought appreciate meant like to be fond of it. When in reality, when an appraiser comes to your house, he looks at everything, good and bad, and he goes, well, this is what it's worth.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so for me, when I appraise, we all appraise ourselves all the time. Mm-hmm. We just happen to be, especially as men, a bit more critical.
Absolutely.
Than we'd like. But like, so when it comes to like art, especially since I am an artist, I'm just like, I am almost always negative first, and then like after a couple listens, I'm like, oh yeah, but then that was pretty good.
Right.
But I always see what could be improved on first, just because you do the thing that you're listening to.
Yeah, it's highly unusual to listen to something and have like an immediate connection.
Yeah,
and it doesn't happen very often. And when it does, I mean, you remember it. You know exactly which albums or which bands like you have that. Because it never goes away. Everything else is just, it kind of grows on you.
Well, dude, it was like that with me just recently with Not Beneath. They're another 2-man band, and they just put a record out in January. And they
realized we're a 2-piece,
yeah. And they're I literally heard like a clip on a podcast of like 30 seconds of one of their songs, and it was like literally the first time in years I was like, dude, I have to have this right now.
Was
like,
that on Travis's as well?
Yeah, I listen to his podcast every week. So like,
dude, there's nothing wrong. Travis is cool. He's been on. He's a great guy.
He's a good friend of the show. So
it's funny. One of the CDs I like you said, you don't get an immediate reaction or immediate like, yes, this is my favorite reaction right away. But one of the things that like just captivated me about this band, I don't know if it's really more of a project, but it's been going on for years. Do you know who Arjen Anthony Lucassen is? He's like a Swede guy, I think.
I do not. Jeff might.
Nope, even I don't.
So the project he works on is it's called Arion.
It's very much different than the kind of music we're talking about.
Totally,
very creative.
Yeah, it's super like experimental, and like it's almost like you could consider it like a metal opera. It's very interesting.
Okay.
But basically, they have a core group of musicians that they lay down the tracks with, as core as they can be. It's changed over the years a little bit. But then he'll always have guest vocalists come in, and he'll have like 30 people sometimes guest vocal on these things from like bands all over the world. It's really ridiculous.
Really cool.
And there'll always be concept albums, so there'll be stories that are like built on. And my favorite one is The Human Equation.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I'm obsessed with concept albums, so yeah.
Dude,
I'm there.
so the very first one you should check out is Arion, the Human Equation, and just watch it, look at all the lyrics. You know, the story's not crazy thick, but it's such cool way to tell a story, and I'm in love with that idea.
Here, I'm gonna send you a link on the chat here.
Yeah, cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Great.
Absolutely. Are you guys ready, or you think we're warmed up? We can start the.
Yeah. I thought you already had, but that's good. It's cool. Metalcore is interesting to me because it I would just kind of start off on a limb here by saying that it has always fascinated me, like the originations of it, and I think there are a few kind of seminal acts in records that kind of were like the starting point for me anyway, and for what I think really where it kind of started to take shape and become its own thing, separate enough from those other genres, like, you know, just being a hardcore band or just being, you know, a metal project. So and I'm talking like, you know, like Deadguy, you know, obviously Converge, Coalesce.
Deadguy.
You know, they didn't last very long, but they were a big deal for a while, and then
Well, they died, right?
Right, yeah. It was a dead guy. I mean, come on.
It's coming, I'm sorry. And if you think that metalcore was shaped by dead guys, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan. That is Jeff. This is Reid and Christian of Tetelestai. What's going on, guys?
Said it right. I'm shocked. No one ever has before.
Oh, that's my thing. When you're a vocal major and you have a diction book on your shelf, you have to say it right. It's not an option.
That's right. That's incredible. Good job. Because I have no idea what Trav said. I can't. I sent him a message, a text of a phonetic breakdown.
Well, the last time Travis and I spoke, he did pronounce it correctly. So
I'm impressed.
He did it.
yeah.
Well, Lithian's his band, right? I saw you guys did a podcast.
Yeah, dude. I'm a huge fan of that band. That's how I know Travis is from that.
Oh, cool.
And the fact that we were in a crappy hardcore band years ago and we recorded an album at Travis's house.
No way.
Yeah.
So small world. I love connecting like that.
Absolutely.
Connections all over the place, but
Before we get into the glory that is metalcore, I want to take some time to say thank you to everyone for listening to this podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, so if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening. And now we're going to tell you all about 5-star reviews. 5-star reviews are the lifeblood of every podcast, and we greatly appreciate any feedback that you guys can give us. So if you want to leave us a 5-star review on whichever platform you subscribe to, we greatly appreciate that. It lets us know how you feel. And if you don't think we deserve a 5-star review, leave us the review you think we deserve, and we will read it on the show. In 2018, we became members of the Amazon Affiliates program, so if you'd like to support this podcast and you're already shopping on Amazon, you can click any of the affiliate links below in the show notes. We link directly to the music that we talk about on every episode, so if you'd like an easy way to get to it and pick up a copy for yourself, please use the Amazon links below. It gives us a little bit of kickback. It does not change the price for you, and we greatly appreciate your support. Dan and I will be telling you all about Patreon later on in the show. Now it's time to talk about a new heavy and metalcore with Tetelestai.
Sean Ingram has said that, like, of Coalesce, he said that, like, when he first started doing hardcore vocals, he was trying to emulate the vocalist from Earth Crisis.
Right, yeah.
You know? And so, and then I know that Zao, too, another, what people would consider, I saw you guys did a podcast on that, too, consider to be an early experimental metalcore-ish band. But, you know, they even have said that they took some of the kind of the weird guitar riff work, like attitudes from your Earth Crisis, and whatnot. So, you know, it's just kind of interesting to me to look at all the connections in kind of the derivatives of the original, so to speak. Like, I'm not saying that each band doesn't have their own thing, by the way. Coalesce definitely doesn't borrow from, Earth Crisis, in my opinion. He doesn't even sound like him, but it was just funny to hear that he's, tried to sound like him.
Well, it's weird too, because like I consider bands like Earth Crisis to be metalcore, and it's weird because so if you want to break everything down by like definition, like not to be like genre police or whatever and like put a label on everything, but like as far as reference goes, like hardcore bands, like to me, were essentially indistinguishable from punk bands. Like you would just yell, you'd yell your lyrics out as fast as you can, as quick as you could, and then you would just like, you'd go into this like punk rock thing. And so like bands like Earth Crisis and like Shai Hulud and stuff like that, like to me, like I heard the metal influence in those bands with like the screaming and the just like the heavy breakdowns and stuff like that. Like they were just basically borrowing thrash riffs.
Yeah.
And putting them together. And like, so like it's.
And that's what Converge did by their own admission, if you don't mind me interjecting.
No, you're fine.
Converge, like they're like, yeah, we're hardcore kids that play Slayer riffs. Like,
yep.
And I think that's another thing for me of like, I've never really gravitated. Like usually people are one or the other. They're left or right. They're either Converge or they're Coalesce, or I suppose some are like, I'm a Botch guy. And like Botch, those three kind of stand out to me. I love all of those bands, but I don't love them all equally. And I think that, man, speaking of, we need a Botch reunion. They're like, it'll never happen.
Yeah, it needs to happen.
Like, they need to do a show or two.
Don't you guys like making money? Like, just make a few $100 off T-shirts and call it a day. Like
seriously, like they could probably make $5,000 on a show.
Absolutely,
because everyone would show up from all over the country.
Yeah, I'd fly out to see it for sure.
I probably would have to, because they broke up. They broke up before like I was into them. What was it, like 10th grade when they broke up?
Yeah, it's so funny too, because like we're talking about like Converge and Botch and Coalesce. Those bands are great, but like it's so funny, like coming from like a Christian background, like we were talking about earlier. I didn't hear it. Like I heard a lot of the derivatives of those bands first.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with this. Like, in hoping to talk about too is like, people are always like, "Oh man, Norma Jean's first record is just totally a Coalesce ripoff," and I'm like, I guess I could hear it in the vocal style, but it's not really. Like, if you dig deeper into Norma Jean, like, and what stuff that Josh Scoggin was into, and like, in Ludacris, like they were, I would say it's more like. A few of the songs have some Coalesce style riffs with the time signatures,
right?
But they're almost more like Willhaven, and like, and not that they, again, this always comes with the asterisk of, I'm not saying that they rip them off or like absolutely borrow.
Sure.
There are some later Norma Jean records that totally borrow from, I want to say, Engineer or the Minor Times.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard that.
Then there's Oh God, the Aftermath, which is
a lot of people call it another Botch record.
It's basically Botch, yeah. Like, almost identical.
Well, I think they did it by intention. They went to the same producer, same record engineer, Matt Bayless.
Yeah,
did Botch. And
imitation's a good form of flattery. I'm sure they weren't going to complain too much.
Yeah,
and then that also brings people back. It brings in a whole new group of people that have never heard Botch. They actually get to go back and see where the influence is. That's kind of like a lot like what we like to do on this is we like to talk about, what you guys like, so people can hear you guys, but also hear where, you guys are coming from.
Our roots, yeah. Well, like I think it's funny because I have the Botch live DVD that they released finally in like 2006.
Yep.
It took them like forever to release it, but
worth it.
But on it, they actually make a comment in the commentary. They're doing like. They have the track where they're like talking over it,
Mm-hmm.
And they actually make a comment like, "Oh, sweet Norma Jean breakdown," and everyone in the like, singing about their own music, like, kind of digging Norma Jean for it. But
that's funny though.
I've seen the Norma Jean guy like Corey Brandon like sort of defend the record, saying no, it wasn't, and I'm sure that every artist in that band, I know Scotty, like. I'm sure he had his own ideas, and Dave, Daniel Davidson like had his own ideas, and it's nothing's an absolute derivative, nothing's an absolute copy, but they definitely tried to like hearken that sound, and I think they did it you know.
Well, it sounded unique for Norma Jean. I mean, it didn't sound anything like Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child did. And I think they needed that. Like, I mean, you can say it's a ripoff, you know, however much you want. That may be true. It may not. But the reality is that was a really big record for Norma Jean because it was different. And it was...
they wanted to establish something different, I think, with Corey as the new vocalist. And I'm kind of at the point now when I look at a band and there's no original members, I'm kind of like, is it time? Is it time? I'm not going to say for sure, but like, I wonder, you know, it's like, I don't know.
Change the name of the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because here's the way I look at it is like, you know, if you lose the majority, if not all the original members, certainly the original members who are actually writing the music, then it's not that band anymore. Even if you have people who fully believe in your vision, you've just made a movement or a statement as opposed to a band.
Right.
And
well,
that's how we feel about In Flames.
Yeah. Well, and I agree. I agree with that to a certain extent, but there are bands that did it right. And
yes,
like I would say like Zao, like you know, like Zao has no original members, but the Zao that exists now is the Zao that we all kind of remember and talk about. You know what I mean? Like
totally.
Well, and that's a counter argument to what we were kind of saying. We're like, because we're kind of 50-50 about that. Like it's like, you know, because sometimes kind of circle back, like Sean and Coalesce, he said that everyone like thinks about the drummer of Coalesce as being James Deweese, and like really, like he said, Nathan, you know, Jr. has been the drummer longer than he ever was. So it's like,
right, yeah,
you know, it's probably just because James was the drummer on their more recognized albums that were established as like, like Functioning and Patience and.
You know, they were like legacy recordings. You know what I mean? Like it's like you know, like I mentioned Zao earlier. Everybody wants to talk about Blood and Fire, Liberate, and even Sean Ingram said on As the Story Grows, he's like, yeah, I know that guy Jesse, the drummer from Zao, and he's like, dude, the guy Jeff that plays drums for Zao has played in the band longer than Jesse did. You know, like
Jesse wasn't in it for very long, was he?
Jesse was in it from the beginning. I mean, he was on like Splinter Shards and All Else Failed and everything. And he was with the band all the way up until they did their Funeral God record in 2004. But that was 14 years ago. You know,
yeah,
like
I liked that record. Back in the day, and like literally when it came out, I was listening to it.
Yeah,
Steve
me too.
Peck.
Yeah,
dude,
I have a kindred spirit.
Yeah, he loves that drummer on that record.
Is that the drummer? Yeah, because it was phenomenal. Like,
yeah, he took over for Jesse during the writing or recording process, depending on what part the DVD is talking about.
But he was only in the band for that one record. That drummer was. We're huge Zao nuts, by the way. I don't know. If
the answer to that question is always going to be how long have the current members spent in the band? You know, like Corey of Norma Jean's a prime example.
He's been in the band longer than Josh Scoggin, yeah.
And I know people still call him the new singer. It's like, guys, he's been in there forever.
He really shouldn't. He really shouldn't be called the new singer anymore. You know, sooner or later you got to get the respect. But speaking of Jesse from Spitfire, he actually no. Jesse of Zao, he actually was kind of a co-producer of the Spitfire record, Dead Next Door.
Oh my god, dude, that record is
heavy.
literally in my top 10.
Yeah, same here, and that's one of the reasons. Like, that's, you know, for me, like, I know it's maybe a little bit. They came out. Okay, that record was '99, right? So they're a little bit like after Zao and after, you know, Coalesce, but because Matt, by his own admission, has told me, he's like, dude, I was obsessed with Coalesce back then, like, you know, and so a lot of the riffs you hear, you know, on that record are very similar, but they were definitely doing their own thing, because I talked to him about it, and he's like, yeah, it was like death metal blended with like kind of Converge-y, like Coalesce kind of vibe, like, you know, and maybe even a little bit of Cave-In, which I don't really hear, and I'm not really a fan of Cave-In, to be honest. I don't know why people think that they're like a seminal act of that genre, but
yeah, that's weird. I like Cave-In's later stuff.
I'm not hating on them by saying that. I'm just saying that I don't hear it.
Yeah. No, I hear, like, the first couple Cave-In records, yeah, like you said, like, they're really they're good, but they're not like influential or pioneering or really that different than what other bands that sounded like them were doing at the time. Yeah, and that's why I actually when K.of.M. essentially went like pop rock, I actually liked that more because it was different, you know, like I thought that separated them from that scene, you know, well enough. But yeah, like, the early records are not like, you know, anything like super, super special, like not compared to their contemporaries at the time.
Well, fun fact too about Jesse. I just wanted to get this all out with the Spitfire record.
Sure, yeah, go right ahead.
Both of our favorites. You know, and I think they recorded with Steve Yvetz. Maybe I'm saying his last name right, but Matt told me, he's like, dude, I was terrified, and it was like I was afraid to make a mistake. It was awful. Like, he hated the recording experience. Like,
wow.
And, he said it was terrible, but they had so fun story. I think it's called the 248 Lie.
Yeah.
The second track, and apparently Matt was like, I had no lyrics for it, so Jesse actually wrote the lyrics in the studio and gave it to him to scream.
Well, that's cool.
So fun story there. I'm not for sure it's that song, but I think it is.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. Like, I mean, that's why you have people with you, you know, as support, you know, for stuff like that. And I know, like, at the time with like Solid State, you know, like they kind of just pushed you to get the record out, you know.
Yeah. Well, and it seemed like they were trying really hard to get 10 songs too, because that last one is like DJ Jazzy Steve, I think it's called, and it's just them like doing this like portion of a breakdown, and it's really funny. There's their first Spitfire release ever is Straining Towards What's to Come, I think is what the EP is called.
Yes.
And I think it's like the first song, Aborted, which they're actually playing the rest from that on DJ Jazzy Steve.
Oh, that's funny.
I don't exactly know if that's the song, but it's off of that record, the Straining Towards What's to Come.
I'll have to listen to that, because I've actually got that EP.
Yeah.
And I've also got the sideshow Whiplash.
Yeah.
I mean, I love everything Spitfire's done, even the older and the newer Spitfire. I thought was pretty good. Although it's kind of weird, because like when they got I'm trying to remember that guy's name that was the new singer of Spitfire. John, yeah, like when I got him,
Scarlet?
Yeah, and it basically Spitfire just basically became Scarlet.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, dude, like it was, but I liked Scarlet enough to be like, I'm okay with that. I'm not 100% comfortable with it being called Spitfire, but
I was never behind like their any of their word, like lyrics or meaning, or like kind of the weird crap he would talk about, and
it's
like
all about cults and shit. Yeah,
it's just like, what are you talking about, man? Like, what are you trying to? I never mind.
He's just trying to be. He's just trying to. No.
I'm not gonna like insult the guy, but
he was trying to be edgy.
I don't vibe with what you're doing, man. Like,
well, because like one of the things I like about hardcore and metalcore is like the passion.
Yeah.
And so when you're writing lyrics like that, where you're basically just trying to be like, you're trying to get a reaction out of people.
Yeah. Right. I don't know. Yeah, I see what you're saying, though. It's like it kind of became Scarlet 2.0, and like, I think Scotty from Norma Jean was a part of the self-help record, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, he was.
Was he in the recording?
He was on that record, yeah.
Yeah.
Just that one, though, not the one that came after, but yeah.
He was a huge Spitfire like fan. Wanted to be in the band like from back in the like early days. Like,
well, then Chris Raines from Spitfire went on and played with Norma Jean.
It's so cool. It's like a weird big family, like,
Yeah, it's a small world, man. Like, we're all connected in some way, like it's weird how all that stuff goes down,
All right, we're playing 6 Degrees of Metalcore tonight.
Yeah, well, no, this is cool because we haven't really had a discussion on metalcore yet. Like, not really. Like me and Brandon Kellum from the band American Standards, we did an episode that was like all on like about Solid State and Tooth and Nail bands and like our history with all that. But that's about as close as we ever got to talking about metalcore. And during that discussion, we weren't talking about Earth Crisis and Botch and stuff. So this is really cool.
Oh yeah, man, I love it. You guys are definitely kindred with all this because with like segueing with like Matt from Spitfire, like I've been friends with him since probably 2006, and I talk a little bit about it on the podcast with Trav, but we wanted to have these guest vocalists on our record that we weren't trying to emulate that era genre, that era exactly, like these guys like Spitfire, Coalesce, but we definitely always, we felt like what we wrote, we spent a lot of time on it, and what we have written, which isn't even out yet, we got a full length we're sitting on, ready to do it this spring.
Nice.
But the things we've written, we like to think they would sit alongside that those records on our shelf, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think so too, and that's part of it. So I thought it was kind of funny that like your guys' tagline was a new heavy. You know, that's your website, and you know, kind of the phrase associated with the band. And it's funny because like when I listened to the record, I liked it because it reminded me of those bands, but not like copycat. Like there's a difference between like reminded of and like, oh, this they just went back to 2000 and the year 2000 or 1999 or something. Right? Yeah, it wasn't like that at all. But I get the same vibe. Like it's almost like that was a really primal time for metalcore.
Yep.
And when everybody was coming, because the bands that came out generally back then didn't all sound the same. You had bands that took a more chaotic route. You had the bands that took the more metal route. You had bands that just kind of added a whole bunch of different ingredients in, you know, to get where we got. And it wasn't until like 5 or 6 years later that, you know, basically you would take one band and everybody would be like, that's the band we want to be like. And that's why everybody hates metalcore.
That's why it became despised. Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think it was probably like 2006 it started happening. Like,
oh no, dude! At least as early as 2004, dude. As soon as As I Lay Dying hit the scene, that was the beginning.
People classify them as metalcore, and I never have. Like, number one, I don't really like them, and I mean,
there's a lot of bad juju, you know, with that band.
There's reasons.
I'm glad that they aren't anymore. Like, they went on and did their own thing separate from the vocalist who's trying to, I don't know.
Yeah, Tim Lambesis is trying to quote unquote get the band back together, so
I hope that never happens.
Yeah, he can go ahead and do whatever the hell he wants.
Stayed out of that band and stayed in point of recognition. Anyway.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants. I just don't want him to use that name. It's not like I'm going to listen to his stuff anyway because he's a disgusting human being. But
it's terrible. I mean, I don't even want to get into that, but
we won't really.
We won't. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. But I was going to say, I think it's kind of funny how we talk about how it ends up, you know, getting saturated and despised, and it's like, you know, it's just like any other genre. Because we've talked with Josh Toomey quite a bit of the Talk To Me podcast about nu metal. In the same kind of curve that's followed it, and I think and now, you know, nu metal starting to pop up again here and there.
It is. Korn somehow has lasted through all of it.
Yeah. Well, that's because dubstep. No.
Oh Jesus!
Get out of my house.
Yeah, okay.
They partnered up with Skrillex, and I was like, okay. I see what you're doing.
And Excision and a bunch of other dubstep people.
That was actually the one discography we discussed where we actually skipped a record.
You want to die today, don't you?
Yeah, we were like, they were all like, this is a collaboration between Korn and Skrillex. Okay, so next album, you know, like that was.
There's a reason why. There's a reason why I wasn't on that one.
we want to appeal to the current generation. Okay.
My kid, my youngest kid is obsessed with dubstep. So.
Throwing stuff. He's throwing bottles.
You know what? Let me put it this way: if your kid is obsessed with dubstep or One Direction,
Dan,
rather choose.
I can't get out, and I'm trapped behind all this equipment.
Because I would choose that I would choose that my kid would be obsessed with dubstep than One Direction. That's just kind of how I look at it.
I get that.
Like, honestly, like, what they need to understand is that, in my opinion, like, why are we talking about dubstep?
Get off my lawn. That's what this is starting to turn into.
I was just going to say, like, he did something brilliant, and all he did was take breakdowns and apply them to electronic music.
Right.
The first time I heard it, I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm discrediting him for it. I'm saying, good job. You did something sooner before someone else did it.
Right.
The first time I saw a Chaos Pad, I said that needs to be attached to a guitar right now and put in Tom Morello's hands.
Ugh.
Ooh, yeah. There you go.
And then everybody started doing that thing. And I just said, okay, well, clearly Tom Morello doesn't need it because he's the original hip-hop guitarist.
Yeah, wow. He did so many creative things. Yeah, I love Rage Against the Machine, and not really so much following like the newer stuff they're doing, but with Prophets of Rage and whatnot.
Yeah,
right.
But
their eponymous release is in my top 5 all time.
Which one is it?
The first, the self-titled.
Self-titled. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Remember, Jeff, there's a rule about you saying the word eponymous.
All right, I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowed to say that word.
Put the dictionary away, dude.
Wow. He's like, so like, just to give a little bit of background on like where we're coming from. So like, I'm kind of the metalcore, like I'm the guy that calls all the Christian bands, and I'm like the metalcore, death metal, thrash metal guy of the podcast. Sweet. Jeff is the like European metal, like folk metal, progressive metal, power metal.
Talk about some things.
Yeah.
Jeff's very like he's cultured.
Do I need to say it?
Raise your hand again. Remind me names.
I'm Jeff. Yeah, I had a classical background. I played the violin, viola, and cello before I picked up a bass.
You are now entering Jeffrey's atmosphere.
Yeah, so I mean, I like having a little bit more volume on a lot of layers, and it's a lot more acceptable in European and actually Australian metal as well.
I'm gonna throw. Oh, you should finish. Sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt.
No. I'm good.
Okay, well, I was just going to throw this at you because you're there's something, and might have a connection point on here. One of my probably my number 2 favorite band of all time is Woven Hand.
Nice.
Do you know them?
Oh yes, I do.
I figured you did when you mentioned the European stuff and just the Gothic. I can't remember the other words you used, but I immediately knew, like, okay, you're going to dig them. And, yeah, they're one of my
flying buttresses.
What?
Flying buttresses. There you go. Yeah, nice. Yeah.
I'm going to bring out a classic, Dan. Nordic.
Yeah, go ahead. This is the part where we throw in some music. No, I'm just kidding.
Brought to you by. Yeah, so...
Woven Hand, don't me.
Right. And then Joe's kind of a combination of both of us in the sense that he kind of just like, if it's good, I like it. If it's not good, I'm going to shit on it. Like it's pretty clear cut. So he's kind of the most balanced out of all of us.
Tell me how I really feel.
Right.
Are you guys, so we're like 28 and 32. That's our ages. So where are you guys?
You're right in our range, except for Jeff. He's the old guy.
Yeah, I'm the old fart.
Yeah, Jeff's like 67.
Well, yeah, you played violin.
Yeah,
mostly cello and viola, but yeah, some violin as well.
It's actually impressive, man. Yeah. My wife does that. She's a classically trained musician as well.
I actually said for years that cello is one of my top 5 favorite instruments. I think it goes, if I remember correctly, bassoon, and then oboe, French horn, cello, and then the grand piano. Drums isn't even top 10.
That's very impressive.
Which this guy is,
I'm an
prodigy.
accomplished percussionist.
So when is the bassoon showing up on the next record?
Yeah.
It's all over the self-titled, right, that we haven't heard yet? Yeah.
Christian is a drum aficionado. There we go.
Yeah.
Dictionary, put it away.
Nice.
Yeah. Basically all I know is what I learned in
Taught himself.
Yeah, that's actually true. I'm a self-taught.
I'm gonna have to do all the talking for him, and that I'm talking him up because it's really bad to talk good about yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know why it is. But
I've been trying to tell Dan that for a long time, but it just hasn't worked.
Shut up, Jeff. I'm great. Anyway, I'm hot stuff because I sang for a band once. But yeah, so like,
Singing.
Yeah, singing. Yeah, but
if you call that singing, it wasn't singing.
It wasn't singing.
Well, it used to be.
But it was good.
I can tell you some stories and play you some clips.
It was all right. Anyway,
I don't even know where we left off.
Oh, it's talking about singing and metalcore.
No, we weren't.
Oh gosh, let's do it.
I've been trying to get
singing has no place in metalcore. Right?
Well, not singing, but yeah.
Okay, I've been metalcore singing. Okay,
I've been trying to get Dan to send in a demo to Invent Animate because they're looking for a new lead vocalist.
You don't have time for that shit. I've got 3 kids and a job that I work 60-hour weeks at. Like, no way.
Make it work.
Just real quick.
Oh, I work for which is a dialysis company.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm a biomedical technician, so I repair all the dialysis machines and keep the water pure. And like, I'm on call right now. Like, I could get called like any minute, and
you have to go. See you later.
I would have just Skyped in on the way. I was like, okay, guys.
Show continue. Oh, no, there's ice.
Let's keep going. Dude, I remember like emailing people like, dude, I know we had an episode tonight. I'm so sorry, but we can't do it.
Yeah.
There's blood everywhere.
Yeah, people are literally dying in the streets, guys. Yeah. But
The show goes on.
Right. This is a podcast. It's more important than that. Yeah.
You need to crack some Cokes. Go get some Cokes.
All right, what do you want?
Yeah.
Just Coke.
You want a regular one?
Yeah.
We have an old one too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so
You
you
want
getting
that?
drinks?
No, that's you.
Oh,
Jeff,
Jeff, can you get us more beers?
yep.
beer me.
All right. Cool.
Elysian for both.
Yeah.
Sure.
If there's any,
Give me
if there's only one Elysian left, give it to me and not Joe.
Joe gets a steel reserve.
Yeah, dude.
You didn't want the vanilla one?
I couldn't find any.
Well, it's upstairs in the
Oh,
fridge.
you have vanilla Cokes. That's awesome.
I'm gonna get one. He didn't tell me where it was. I didn't ask. We're both wrong.
So how's the weather up there?
Oh, it's bad. It sucks. We just got we got snow, and then we got snow on top of snow.
I always just assumed it was always 400 inches of snow year round.
No, we're not. We're not North Dakota and Minnesota.
Right.
Once you get up there, man, it's like minus 50 and just practically Canada.
Well, we're in St. Louis, so you never know what the weather's going to be like from day to day.
Yeah, a few days ago it was 66 degrees, and now we're supposed to get a quarter-inch of ice tonight. So you never know what the hell's going to happen.
And then Sunday it's going to be 60 again because it's Missouri and we decided it's spring.
Right.
Dude, I like Missouri. I really do. My in-laws live there, and the taxes are great, and those are two separate thoughts. But
You're right on both counts.
we're at Missouri.
yeah. Oh, I actually don't know the name of the place, but because they're in the country.
You get their exact address.
What I'm getting at with you guys, I drove across the state of Missouri to St. Louis multiple times, and traffic sucks.
Yeah. Yeah,
Being
it does.
polite saying it that way, like that. There's people going way too fast, and then they're swerving lanes, and then there's people going way too slow.
Well, yeah, dude, we got
God, we're the
podcasts to
worst.
do. We got to get,
You guys attest to this, or are you just used to it?
Here's the thing about St. Louis traffic. We have an interstate highway that runs east to west that we call 270 that comes from Illinois and goes all the way over to Jeff? Kansas City and beyond?
That's 70, not 270.
Okay, but they merge at one point, so here's the thing. You've got 6 lanes of traffic in certain areas. The limit is 60, so everybody has way too many options. They're trying to get off. They're trying to get on the highway. They're trying to get all the way to the left because they want to get around my ass because I'm doing the fucking speed limit. And they're trying to do 80, but there's a cop in front of them, so then they're doing 70, and then they slam on their brakes. And I'm just sitting here thinking, guys, if you're not going to the next state over, just stay where you are. You're going to get off in a mile anyway, and then they come whipping across 4 lanes of traffic.
I don't get stressed driving in any condition of weather because I was a farm kid and I started driving at age 8 and nothing bothers me. And that's not the only reason, but whatever. I'm a careful driver, no accidents on my record, whatever.
Right.
And I want to say I've driven in fog where you can't see in the middle of the night, all night. Went and played Cornerstone once, 10 years ago.
Nice. Been there, done that. Yep.
Yeah, and it was, it was crazy. We were listening to see Ross, and it was like a cinema experience, but it was terrible.
Right.
Because it was foggy and it was crazy. But driving in St. Louis, man, that legitimately stressed me out.
Yeah, it's really. We're all lucky to be alive. I mean, I'm not
going north or south. We're fine. It's for some reason that when we turn towards the sun, we lose our goddamn minds.
Oh yeah.
Accurate. 100% accurate.
Yeah, that's for
I've done it a few times. I've been on tour. I've driven in a 15-passenger van with a trailer on it, and had a parallel park in Chicago.
Jeez.
And during rush hour, and I've driven big cities. That didn't stress me out. Driving in St. Louis with a 4-door car stressed me out.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the road rage here.
I'm cool.
Yeah, by the way, I was just going to say you can cut this whole part about it. I'm the one that brought it up and said,
absolutely not. This is going in right in the middle of the fucking show.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it'll be so boring. No one's going to hear our music.
You should chop this up into weird segments, this whole section, just it's in the middle of nowhere. We're talking about podcasts. Great, come on.
Glad you cut it up.
The Tetelestai mega podcast.
Yes.
I think the longest podcast we did was 3.5 hours.
Was that the Travis?
That was with Scott Mellinger from Zao.
Oh yeah, that was my fault.
Yeah, we went on and on.
That was so my fault.
It was your fault because
Tell us about that, Jeff.
We had Scott back. We had Scott back on just a couple weeks ago to talk about Carcass, and Jeff couldn't make it, and it was an hour and 5 minutes, or
Yep.
He was having one of those, oh my God, do you know who you are moments.
But
no, actually it was my parents' fault. They bought me a growler before that show.
Yeah.
That was bad.
Way to show up at your second job drunk, Jeff.
It's the only time I've done it, and I've never done it since, and it'll never happen again.
Well, to bring it back to metalcore, which is...
You take a drink.
Hey, this is only number 2.
That's fine.
Woohoo! No.
We just sit here and drink 8% beer.
Hey, Dan, do you need a poll? Here you go. Reel it in.
No, it's fine. So back on metalcore, what I thought was really cool to talk about your guys' record, number one, I could see through it, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And
Come on.
I really enjoyed track 3, which I think was Preeminence. Is that right?
Yeah. Preeminence of. Yep.
Yeah, Preeminence of. That's right, with DJ, and that was that's probably my favorite song on the record because it's just like, not to sound like a meathead or whatever, but it's just so heavy. Towards the end, like, I mean, it's literally like being crushed by a boulder, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, like, it really is. Like, it's, you know. So I guess if I was like Satan, I'd be anyway.
DJ sounds great on that, by the way.
DJ does sound amazing on that.
So if you guys can get him to,
We're talking about Satan here for a second. I was like, we can
continue to
kill him. Yeah.
crush.
We'll go ahead and continue to crush Satan. Yeah. Which
Plug
is
album title there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Which was a really bold choice, I have to say. Like, it's been a decade and a half at least since I bought something called like Crush Satan. You know what I mean? Like, not like there's some other stuff out there that's called that, but like what I mean is just like that, the mindset, which was really intriguing. And again, it kind of was like that warm, fuzzy feeling.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and don't misinterpret me. There's nothing warm or fuzzy on the record, you know, but like,
it was nostalgic for you, which is cool because
it really was. Like, it reminded me like of the first time I heard Living Sacrifice or you know, stuff like Spitfire, and you know, I mean, even like Norma Jean's first record. I mean, because like I got into that stuff, and then what I did is I went back and I backtracked. Yeah. And I found all the stuff that had led up to that. But because, you know,
you went derivative and then you went backwards,
Right. So like back in the like back then, you know, I was kind of only allowed to listen to Christian music, or I chose only to listen to Christian music because of where I was at the time. And so, like, a lot of the bands, it's so funny because everybody talks about, like, Earth Crisis and, like, stuff like Shai Hulud and even Coalesce, you know, and, like, bands like that and Converge. But, like, for me, whenever I go back and I think about hardcore, I'm pulling out, like, Focused and Strong Arm and, you know, like, stuff like that. Which,
Overcome.
You know, Overcome. Oh, yeah, dude. Like, for real. Unashamed, you know, like.
I like Overcome a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, like that. I mean, Overcome just got better and better, man. Like,
I really can hear even them influencing Spitfire a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah, and I considered those bands metalcore. It's just that like they were they mixed thrash riffs with hardcore music, and then but like the bands that like we're talking about, like the more, you know, like the heavier bands, they were mixing death metal riffs with with hardcore. So like. You know, that's the big difference.
They did it before it was cool. Like that whole like, that's some of my favorite riffs. You know, like break into breakdowns on the Spitfire record. Like Matt was like, yeah, man, we were like mixing in like death metal and that, like a lot of really Living Sacrifice, you know, and whatnot. So we kind of actually, I keep going in circles about this, but we brainstormed. Me and Matt were on the phone and we're like, man, we got Sean, we got you on it, and I'm like. I'm just, you know, Bruce couldn't do it. He was too busy. He's a busy guy. I actually kind of got the idea to have him on there because, number one, I love his vocals. Number two, I saw that he had done Tony Danza.
Yeah, dude. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was on that. Yeah.
From Tony Danza ever, like the one that he did on the Boogaloo 2 second record or whatever. Electric Boogaloo, I think it was. You guys talked about that.
It was the Electric Boogaloo,
I was totally bummed that I missed that because I was actually. That
was before you were on the show, Joe.
No, it was in between. That was right after the Death episode with Travis.
That's right. We had a host before, and then he couldn't do it anymore, so we had this like weird transitionary period.
And I was like, man.
Or you pretended he died because I said it was a Death episode.
No, we talked about the band Death with Travis from As the Story Grows.
Oh, okay.
And we didn't really talk about death. We talked about like Alathian
everything
and
else.
like anything I could come up with at the time.
And when he says we, he means himself and Travis.
Well, that was the
Joe
first
and
time
I sat there with our thumbs up our asses.
That was the first time me and Travis had actually spoken
in like 10 years.
Yeah.
It was
so
like it was like like two like people from high school that were best friends in high school and saw each other again for the first time.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it was. It was actually it was fun to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
Everyone died. In the aftermath, there were no survivors.
Yeah. Anyway, so
I'm going to send you something that a friend made about a decade ago. It's called "There Were No Survivors," and you guys are going to watch it and you're going to enjoy it. I promise.
Well, and what he's referencing is our band Into Destiny.
Dan, the joke's not funny if you explain it. You know
I'm going to explain it. No, okay. Hey, you're the editor. You can cut it out of the show if you don't like it.
Please do.
But no, we were in a band called Into Destiny, and we had this song called "The Day the World Fell Down." At the beginning of that song, I literally just scream, "Everyone died in the aftermath. There was no survivors," which is like terrible. Which is like terrible lyrics because like if everyone died in the aftermath, that heavily implies that there were no survivors. I don't have to say it. Like artistically, it is not necessary for me to say that next line.
Everyone's dead. They're dead.
Right? Yeah, dead, buried. The end. But it was really cool at the time because oh my god, we were in a band. But yeah, like. Oh my god, he's gonna play it now.
Can you guys see what I'm sending you?
I'm looking at it.
No, you guys have to watch it in silence though. You can't be distracted. The audio matters.
All right, I'm watching it.
Okay, we'll watch it later.
These guys made this before YouTube was a thing. Like, yeah. Anyway, okay, so let's talk about. We kind of started to touch on it, like singing in metalcore, and for me, that's where like the great fork in the road happens.
You think so?
For me, I don't like my metalcore to have singing.
Okay, I'm kind of on the same page.
Yeah, see, this is where
I'm not totally against it, but
like for me, like metalcore is the bad word. Metallic hardcore is what I like.
Well, metallic hardcore was the original term.
The same thing, but I have my own definition, and that's my way of doing it.
Well, that was the original term, metallic hardcore. I get you. You're like 100%.
You know, metalcore is like when you start adding synths and you start singing, and you mix in, you know, a little bit of post-hardcore, you know, and it's like, I don't know. That for me is a different genre, I guess. Like, you know, the Devil Wears Prada and Under Oath, which again, like derivative, but
yeah, I don't mind the
we just did an Under Oath episode.
The whole dichotomy. I kind of like the beauty and brutality all wrapped up in one pretty bow package. You know, that's just kind of, but that's me. I like having the ebb and flow in. There's a contortionist reference, but yeah, that's just what I like. And Dan's more like, let me kick your ass and be in your face for the entire album.
Yeah, and that, you know, and I can understand both. Like, just for me, it feels like such different. This feels like a different genre, I guess, is for me, I think. And maybe it's my starting point when I got into it, you know, like all the bands I was going to see a weekly basis, like, you know, they were all basically like that. Like, there was no singing involved. Like, it was just all heavy, super pissed. And
yeah, well, that's probably because, you know, I came more from like a power. I like a lot of, back in the day, I liked a lot of power metal.
Oh, yeah. Wow. So like operatic singing over like really fast riffs.
Yeah. So, I mean, so the clean singing in metal for me was, you know, it just, you know, it was second nature. It wasn't that big of a deal for me. So, you know, whenever I came across metalcore, because actually I didn't get much into metalcore until, I don't know, 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. So I guess I was getting to the party a little later than most were.
That's about when I got to the party.
Yeah, well, for my age.
But yeah, I mean, you're like in your 60s, so.
Yeah, I'm in my 60s, so.
67. What's funny about this whole conversation is that when you hear, especially nowadays, when you hear this type of genre with the singing, if you listen to the song as a whole, there's actually some pretty basic formula behind it for almost all of it. And it's a grungy part at the beginning where the parts aren't very interesting to listen to, but you can tell that it's like hardcore-ish because it's played down tune and slightly down tempo, right? That's kind of like the basic form.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, it becomes melodic and beautiful and full, out of nowhere. So I think a band that has a better formula than that is Extol. I don't know if you've ever heard them.
Oh yeah, we have.
Extol. Yeah.
Nice.
So I listened to them for the first time, I think, 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Wow.
And I was blown away. I had no idea that there was music like this, because their melodies that they write, it's very interesting, interwoven, and then all of a sudden it just goes back to the melodic parts basically go from vocals to guitars. They split who bears the load of driving the melody, whereas
No, I love that band.
Me too.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. And so to me, that's a prime example of a band that I believe could literally go to any metal show anywhere and fit in.
Yeah.
It's a shame they didn't get any further than they did. I mean, they were just phenomenal. I mean, their Undeceived record, dude, is like a perfect record.
Yeah.
And I don't throw that term out very often.
They just did another record.
I know, and it's great. I've got the vinyl for it. I've become a huge vinyl junkie over the past 5 years. So
I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really, and I loved their new album. It was progressive, had tons of singing on it. I did not care. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at with that. For me, they're definitely a different breed of metal.
Well, you guys heard Flesh Killer?
Yeah, man. There's a member or two of
Extol. Yeah, well, it's the guy that kind of wrote a lot of the guitar stuff for Extol. And,
right, I really dig it.
Yeah, and it's the Flesh Killer release to me. It really sounds like an Extol record, you know.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
What we really need to do then is actually, at some point in the future, we need to do an episode about Extol. We'll hook up and do another one.
All right, we're adding that to the calendar today.
Yeah, I love that band. I could talk about them for hours.
Cool, man. You're gonna school me on that, because they're not my.
Oh yeah.
They're not I don't know everything about them per se, but
you will when we do the episode. Don't you? That's why we exist.
Speaking of previous bands like that, man, do you guys ever get into the Famine?
Famine was amazing.
I absolutely loved their
talk about a no clean singing, just guttural. I mean, just dudes. Yeah, dude.
Mentality, man.
Well, did you like Embodiment? Embrace the Eternal.
I didn't really get into that. I didn't really check that band out, to be honest with you. I kind of just breezed over it.
You need to listen to Embrace the Eternal.
Not until I actually got into the Famine. I was into the Famine from the very beginning. When they did their demos, and then and then did the full length, The Raven and the Reaping. I didn't really like their final record, but it's because that they
changed the vocalist, and I really liked the vocalist on the first one.
Yeah, Chris McCadden, I think was his name, and he was a solid dude, and he had content was great, but the content on the second one was just really just, it kind of fell out. The bottom fell out, and it really changed their DNA.
Well, they were competing philosophies. Each vocalist had totally different worldviews, and it showed.
Exactly, it showed, and I think that's a huge mistake. And I'm actually occasionally chat with the drummer, Mark. He's so
Garza,
cool.
yeah,
so cool. And I asked him once. I said, speaking of that record, The Raven and the Reaping, I'm like, dude, the drums sound perfect. Drums sound perfect.
You're welcome.
That guy is a beast, man.
And I asked him, I'm like, did you guys sample any of those? Did you do any of that? Because I was just wanting to know the truth.
He probably got pissed off when you said that.
No, I wasn't accusing him of that. I knew he played it all, because I'd seen him do it live. And that definitely, he was like, no, none of it's sampled. It's all live recording. There's no layers of samples or anything. And I was so impressed by that, because I've never heard that record. To me is if you want to point to a live recording of drums, aside from our own, of course,
Right.
But no, that to me is what I'd point to, be that is how to make drums sound good when you record them for real.
Yeah, he's a beast. And it's weird too, because until we started this whole analyzation of
please
anal.
God, say that again. Start over, for God's sake.
Analyzation. Analyzing of records.
Rewind.
Analyzing of records.
You want to say that whole thing again, please?
Analyzing of records.
No, the whole thing, not just the word.
Not anal, but analyzing.
Jesus. Okay. Well, before we started the whole analyzation of records with what we do on the podcast, is that I didn't realize how many people weren't actually playing their parts.
Oh gosh.
I had no idea. Like, it was really just like I was a music fan. I never paid attention to it. And it's weird because, like, when we recorded our album, if somebody had tried telling us that, like, hey, we can just set up a drum track, you know what I mean? Or like, you know, we can just
program bass.
Yeah, or like, and we'll just sample, you know, all the snare hits and stuff. Like, I definitely would have like felt like a feeling of revulsion. Like, well, it's not really us playing, so I'm not really comfortable with it, you know. But like, it's weird to me because I just figured that nobody did that, and apparently, like, everybody does that.
Well, and then you have all these guys that are like teaching people how to record, like hardcore mixing and whatnot, and they're really, really nice dudes, really skilled at what they do. But the one disagreement that I have with them is that they're always teaching people like how to do things like that. Like, oh, here's how you program bass, and here's how you get a great synthetic low end. And I'm like, oh man, I hate that. I don't know why I hate that. I think I'm just a purist. And
I just like music played by human beings.
Yeah,
Right.
And
Well, because here's the, I mean, again, we all know this because we all believe in the same thing about, you know, the fundamentals of music is that it was made by people. So when you
take the humanity.
Yeah, so the great thing about people is that they have slight imperfections in the way they play things. So like, you know, even just like a basic E chord on an acoustic guitar, you ask an acoustic guitar player who's been playing for 35, 40 years and is a accomplished professional musician, you ask him to play that at the exact same level and intensity for even a minute straight, he can't do it. You'll see imperfections in the lines. But you don't tell a story by saying the same thing the same way for a minute straight. You know, you can literally have a guy play two chords back to back and keep repeating that, and it can tell a story. It can take you places with dynamics, with making an arpeggio, with playing, you know, with your fingers, and then, you know, so you can emphasize and replicate all you want with the machine, but at the end of the day, I can always tell, because I know what it takes to actually produce and lay down those types of very specific and little incremental changes in order to make it real, in order to convey the emotion, in order to make the idea come across. And so that's why, you know, I've got two brother-in-laws whom I love very much, but they listen to music that's almost, you know, 60 to 75% synthesized, and that's not all they listen to, but yeah, quite a few. And so I'm like, how do you read a response? How do you get a story from this? And I look at it, and the answer is simple. They have a very talented vocalist who is good at writing lyrics. So now, this is why I believe we called ourselves, you know, a new heavier. It's kind of our mantra, is because we kind of want to take back of some of the responsibility of instrumentation of telling some of the story. Because now it's basically a lead man with taking pen to paper and writing a story out or writing his thoughts out, and the music is there just to support him. And, you know, basically hit spacebar and he can just do a one-man show. And to me, I'm like, that takes away all responsibility as a musician to perform what you believe consistently all the time. So that's the only gripe I have against electronic music, is that,
or like, you know, synthesizing, what you mean? Like,
synthesizing, you know, like, yes,
programming, all that stuff.
Yeah, like I love what it helps you do. I don't like that it takes away your job.
Yeah.
That's the
no, I feel you. You know? And like, I think there's a lot of drummers out there that'll come in and, you know, because I think drums, it's like the biggest offender.
Absolutely.
You know,
for
because
the past
like
15 years,
because
absolutely.
like extreme metal is so like always demanding of more extremity. You know, it's like working a sales job. You know what I mean? Like, right. you sell, you know, some insane amount of product one day, and then you come in the next day, and then that's the expectation for that day.
I've done it, and it sucked.
Yeah, but like, it's the same thing with like extremity and heaviness. Like, we as the fans are always like, you know, God, it's just so brutal. It just gets so heavy. You know, their next one's going to be even heavier. You know,
let's get more.
Yeah.
Home recording drove that whole thing to a certain extent, because for years it was very difficult to make a high quality recording at home just because of the cost.
Right.
And as time went on, it became very obvious that whoever was developing the home recording software and the home recording plugins, the home recording features that we were able, they were primarily, somebody figured out it's really easy to make the guitar sound good because that's only one microphone. It's really easy to make the bass sound good. It's really easy to make the voice sound good. And then it got really easy to program high-quality sounding drums. And a whole lot of home recording engineers and songwriters woke up and said, I can actually make something that sounds really good. And then that whole mid to late 2000s and early teens thing happened where it already sounded fake, so everybody just kind of went with it.
Dude, that's where the divergent, paths happen for me. It's like I'm okay with layering it. Like if that's fine, but it has to have some realness in the foundation, if you ask me.
Yep.
And realistically, it only recently got to the point where you could do drums in a home environment and make them sound very well. It took a while for everybody to figure out how to actually do that. Now that we can do that.
Yeah. Well, in the dynamics, as long as you have a good electronic drum kit or you record the actual microphone and then do a sample layer on top of it, like you can capture the dynamics now. And I think the reason that a lot of companies are profiting and doing so well with the like the drum, like Kurt Ballou just came out with one for drums where you can make it sound just like his studio, which is a lot of the reason people go to him. You just connect it to electronic drum kit. It's pretty crazy. I don't have it yet, but I want to check that out at some point.
Well, one of my favorite plugins that I never got to make a record with was BFD. Just big fucking drums. It was one of the first really popular sampled studios where they had microphones all over the place, and you actually had the reverb sound of the room, and you could mix that how you wanted. Yeah. And I remember watching a demo that somebody did where they had mapped their drum recordings out to MIDI triggers that they were using BFD to trigger the reverb sound, and they made this giant drum sound out of it.
Yeah.
And I thought, totally this is amazing that you can do this at home.
Right.
But somebody skipped that and went straight to these are the drum samples that were preloaded with Easy Drummer. Let's just do this. This is easier. Yeah, but can your drummer actually play it in a show?
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. I think that puts the cap on it, man.
Yep. Well, and I've seen it too. Like a lot of bands, I'll listen to their record and I'll be like, this is pretty damn good. And then like I'll go see them live and it's like the drummer's playing like halftime.
Yep.
Oh, gosh.
On everything because they figure that the average music fan isn't looking for that.
That's right.
It's like, well, you guys are wrong because I've got a very discerning ear, But but people notice stuff like that.
My name's Joe. I'm Dan's discerning ear.
Right, like people notice things like that, and it is really sad. And I'm not going to sit there and shit on it too much more, but like it's sad that like we have music that like is an ideal scenario. Mm-hmm. And like I don't hold it against anybody for wanting the record to sound as good as it can possibly sound.
Oh yeah, it's just when it sounds like perfect is the problem.
Right, because when it sounds perfect, because like what we like in music is the imperfection.
You got that right. That's what the ear likes.
100%.
It's the odd and even harmonics, dude.
Right, because if it all sounds too good, then you're gonna reach a point where it just goes into your head and goes in one ear and goes out the other, and it's just noise that you're hearing.
It becomes sterile.
Yeah.
So the question is, I have a sneaking suspicion that in most instances it's not the band that is wanting that sound. It's the label and the record producers that are looking for the perfect the perfection essentially in what is good for radio play. You know, and things of that nature, even if it is metal, because there's plenty of places like Phoenix where metal's got a really thriving scene, and there's actual stations that play it regularly.
That imperfection I was talking about, though, like that's, to me, that's why Converge is good. The first time I heard Petitioning the Empty Sky, dude, I about shit myself because it was, and I heard it years later, after it wasn't a big deal anymore. Mm-hmm. But I remember hearing that and just being like, Well, it doesn't sound great, but that's what I love about it, because there's literally just so much. There's so much like extremity and so much humanity to it. Because the human eye and the human ear is really good at determining fakeness.
You got that right.
Well, so I talk about this all the time. I was by no means like any sort of psychology major, but I love to look at the human mind and perspective and kind of how we perceive the world. And that's when I learned about the uncanny valley.
The terrifying uncanny valley.
Right. And so for people who don't know, it's a real quick thing. It's why you don't like masks or clowns or mannequins, is because you can tell it's trying to be human, but it's not quite there. And so you see the 98% truth and you dismiss it 100% wholesale, but you can't because it's still right there. So it's not like if someone held up a piece of paper and was like, "This is a frog," and you're like, "No," and you move on. But
right.
If you hold up a paper mache frog and from a distance you're like, "This is a frog," you're like, maybe. And then you get closer, you're just like, "That's not a frog." But the fact that you feel like you got lied to for even a second puts you on edge. It puts you at fear.
Or just at least the stomach turn.
At least the stomach turn. It is almost a feeling of apprehension. And I believe there's such things as audio uncanny valley is. You really...
I'm not going to name any names, but I definitely have it. I've watched like YouTubers that have their own music and they release it, and me and Christian like sit there and listen. I'm like, we sound like really negative guys. We're super not negative.
It's fine. I am, so
No, we're definitely positive about most things, and we're not dumping on anybody. It's just why I'm not dropping names, but
Frank.
But yeah, Frank. So
damn it, Frank.
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 Oh my gosh, I know these guitars are all fractals. And I know these drums are all sampled. I know it. I can hear it.
Yep.
And
you click some buttons and that's the sound you got.
That's great for demos. That's great for a practice, but that's not great for an album. So anyway,
it's even great if that's all you've got.
Right. That's true. Right.
Yeah.
But once you say, "I'm gonna put this on the internet or put this in a store and ask people to pay for it," try a little harder, guy.
Well.
Yep.
That's just it. It can feel fake, and that's why I think I lean a little bit more towards the hardcore side of all of it. Yeah, and I like the chaotic bands because
you're noisecore, man.
Yeah, your brain can't. Well, and a genre of music that I like a lot is old screamo, and for anybody that's listening, when I say screamo, I'm not talking about Under Oath or Emery or bands like that. I'm talking about stuff like Page 99, City of Caterpillar,
Great band.
That sort of stuff. And that music is, so when I'm talking about screamo, I'm talking about something that sounds more akin to grindcore than it sounds, like emo music or whatever the modern version of emo
I heard emo when we were talking about imperfections with drums. William Goldsmith is probably one of my favorite drummers of all time. That's what made Sunday Day Real Estate so good for me, was the fact that you can tell that he was a great drummer, but it wasn't perfect.
About the imperfection and about all that. That's why I lean more towards the hardcore side of things, because it's more passion, or even the screamo stuff.
DIY,
yeah. I love that stuff because it sounds real. Mm-hmm. And I know we're beating a dead horse here, but the chaotic bands that do something that you're not expecting. Mm-hmm. That sounds more human to me than, okay, we're gonna follow. We're gonna do verse, chorus, verse, breakdown.
Yep.
And that stuff really started to wear on me, and especially with Christian music. If we're gonna talk about metalcore again, it is one of the only genres of extreme music where Christian music actually played a significant hand in it,
and does it well.
It does it well. Yeah, some of the bands, because you can't talk to somebody about old metalcore without somebody mentioning Zao or Spitfire or Living Sacrifice. And even bands like Under Oath and As I Lay Dying, which we kind of, aren't giving the top marks, but the fact that people know them and they were the bands that popularized the style.
Yeah.
Metalcore for the longest time for me was the Christian genre of music, where almost you had a 60-40 chance, for the first time of when you checked out a new band that they were probably a Christian band,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, there's nothing wrong with that too. Like, to segue a little bit, there's nothing wrong with that if it's genuine. But what my big beef with a lot of quote unquote Christian bands is that they wear it like a badge and then get on a Christian label, and then 5 years later they're like, oh yeah, we're not sure what we believe. We're not a Christian band,
Right.
They're running to hide underneath the table, and that's where they lose my respect.
Well, see, and I'm kind of on the I'm going to disagree with you on this podcast now. But no, like that's kind of where I'm at. Like, because like when we did End of Destiny back in like 2005, 2006, there was no question that we were a Christian band. Like it was what we believed, it was what we were into. But there is something to be said about being 15, 16 and playing a style of music in your garage with your friends and like you not really experiencing life yet. Mm-hmm. And
Under
so
Oath?
because we talked about Under Oath a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how bad the lyrics were on the first couple of releases. And the reason for that is because they were kids. Mm-hmm. And they didn't know how to, so they wrote like horrible songs about abortion, and like we never made any kind of like statement as to what we were, if we supported it or didn't support it, because that's not what our podcast is about. But like,
right.
But I was like, these sound like lyrics that were written by 15-year-olds.
Yeah,
because they were.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the solid state tooth and nail bands from that era, I think they really did start, like, I feel like a lot of the Christian music started in a really sincere place. And then over time, these people actually experienced like real hardship or like real life or whatever. And I think everybody kind of reevaluates their beliefs as they get older.
I think it comes with the testing of your faith. Like, people come up against things, and
absolutely,
you decide, you figure out whether it's your faith or your parents' faith. And
sure.
And that's where I feel like it's unfortunate, because I'm a believer, and I'm not judging them for it. I just think it's frustrating, and it's unfortunate, because like Figure 4, that band, like not really metalcore, I guess, but like
hardcore. I used to really. They was Suffering the Loss. That was one of my favorite hardcore Christian CDs.
Super Christian band, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then the vocalist is the comeback kid singer there for a while, or maybe he still is, and like super doesn't believe in God, and like just totally rejected everything. Apparently,
right.
It's me. I'm like, I don't. Or like Tim Lambesis, like we were talking about that. Like, I mean, that's a little bit different, because he got into steroids and then got like a God complex,
right?
And like went crazy basically. But he was a solid dude apparently before that. It's like, I mean, not that you don't have to be, you get what I'm trying to say, I hope.
No, I do. I was thinking about that because I was talking recently with somebody about this, because so our whole thing was when we first started the podcast, there was this thought in my head of making it like a Christian podcast. Like, we would just talk about Christian bands. And we do that, I mean, a lot, and it kind of irritates some people sometimes, but I don't care.
No, I'm just
good.
But like the whole thing,
I'm just messing.
That's the tagline of the new website.
But the whole thing,
we don't care.
The whole thing, yeah, we don't care. Listen to it or don't. Who gives a shit? But yeah, like what it really boiled down to for me, it's like, so I was like really hardcore Christian from like 2000 and I don't know, I guess like 2001 until 2005, 2007, like that era. And I still identify as a Christian like 100%, but I have realized that like during those days of like preaching from the stage and doing like Christian projects and being involved in all this stuff, like I had experienced so much life up to that point that I had changed fundamentally in the 10, 11 years, since that. And so, I mean, I'm a little bit more rough around the edges than I was at one time, at that time. So I didn't feel like it was 100% honest to come across like, hey, we're going to do this Christian thing. We hope everybody's on board, And so it was one of those things where we just kind of like took this route of, and like I kind of compare it to As the Story Grows, in the sense of like, it's a Christian-ish podcast, like
Yeah, he even said it's like it's not by intention, but
yeah,
it's how it happens.
Right. It's just kind of like where we're at. I mean, like, no, I don't think any of us are out there being all like, fuck God, fuck the Bible, fuck all that. Like, we're not like that, but we are more like not what the traditional church-going Christians are going to listen to, or
it's like inclusive of inside and outside that bubble sort of thing.
It's funny that you say that you think that you're a bit more rough around the edges now. I would actually identify with the more rough around the edges folks anyway, the way that I am, my personality.
Right.
Like, there's guys that I have known growing up that were Christians all their life, and then they, I'm not going to say sheltered, because I don't believe in sheltered, because I think eventually life catches up with you whether you're ready for it or not. And so you can say you're sheltered up to a certain point, but then real life happens and you experience hardships, like you say, and it changes you fundamentally. But at your core, especially as a man, especially if you like listening to heavy music, that probably means that there's a sense of healthy frustration in you, I'll say.
For sure, yeah.
And I think that's something that every man should actually like about themselves, not just battle with and contend with, but actually like about themselves. We were made, especially in healthy family units, to be warriors, to be conquerors, to be defenders, to be, men who believe in courage and honor. And so that sort of stuff is the stuff that I identify with. I don't really care about the specificity of it. I don't really care about the language you use. That to me is my favorite thing, is seeing a man living in righteous living and caring about his brothers. That to me, especially when it comes to Christianity, that's what makes a man. And so
you're kind of hitting on what I'm about. I'm not necessarily much on the spiritual side of things. I mean, I was raised a Christian. I mean, I've led youth groups and things of that nature in the past. The most important thing for me is morality and how you treat your fellow human being. And for me, that's the most important thing. I always try to be fair and honest and give everybody a chance and be kind.
Yeah.
Because that's what I want somebody, if that's what I want, so shouldn't I give that in return? Mm-hmm. And so, for me, it's always been the morality play. So, like, I was, we were joking a little earlier, like saying when doing a little less Christian, and it's really not that. It's just that I want more European metal. That's really what it is.
I said we were going to talk about Extol. It's okay,
So there might be ulterior motives on my end. So sure, I guess there's a little bit.
Dude, we thought we were being so edgy that week. We talked about mortification, and the next week we talked about Slayer. Like
I agree. Like, the faith issue is like, what good is your faith if it doesn't have practicality? What good is it? In what I said earlier isn't supposed to sound like judgmental towards those people that have like rejected their faith or walked away from it. It's just, to me, it's like, I guess my question to them is like, was it ever real? And did you ever really dig deep for those answers you were looking for? Or did you just accept something you were fed? Or in our YouTube culture like that we're in right now, like, did you just watch a video that convinced you that everything was a lie and everything's a conspiracy? And, we could talk about that for a whole episode, but
right.
That's kind of what we're about. Like, we're about our band. Like, you get our record. It's called Crush Satan, and I mean, you take 5 seconds in our lyrics and it's like, it's pretty evident what we're about, and it's like, we're not preaching though. That's the thing. We're declaring something that we believe is true. And we're not like preaching from the stage. We're not like, and that's fine if people want to do that, by the way. But we're not like preaching from the stage. We're not like actually identifying like, oh yeah, we're going to go get on a Christian label now or whatever. We absolutely are not. We are not going to go and get on a Christian label. Like,
well, and I didn't even know until I read the saw the name of the album was Crush Satan. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess it's like a Christian sort of project, and I didn't, it was interesting because like I wouldn't have even really known if I didn't read the lyrics or or really like pay attention, and but at the same time, like it still instilled this like feeling of me because it was like when I was listening to it, I was like, man, this is like so back in the day.
Yeah.
But not like a rip off, like I said. Yeah, like it was very much like this would have been. I would have listened to this right along with Living Sacrifice or Embodiment or any of those bands.
That's high praise, man. Living Sacrifice is it, man. That's one of my favorites. Personally,
I think that the lead vocalist, like the lead vocal sound, is very similar to Bruce from Living Sacrifice.
Well, that's me. I appreciate that. But here's what's funny about that, and I'm telling you the honest truth. Like, we actually are least influenced by them.
Well, no, yeah, musically you sound nothing alike, but
and for me vocally, I'd say Sean from Coalesce is my biggest influence. But I don't sound like him, and I don't try to. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely like have developed over the years like my own like cadence in the rhythmic patterns of the way I like to do vocals. Sometimes I'm listening to a record and I'm expecting it to go a certain way because I like the way that I view music, and it just doesn't. I'm like, oh, missed opportunity.
Well, and I love rhythmic vocals, and I definitely got that vibe, off of it, where it was just like it was really like it was just as profound of an instrument as the bass, as the guitar, as the drums, and I love that in heavy music, and that's one of the things I liked about the Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza was he kind of screamed on the like on the downbeat, and he sounded very percussive as well, and I love that kind of stuff.
Same here. I love that record, or their records is what I mean.
All their records, yeah,
they're fantastic.
And like you may have heard it in the podcast with Trav, but like the way we write music actually is we write everything minus vocals. Like we write absolutely everything first, and we want to make it interesting enough where you could listen to it as an instrumental album, and then I go and I do a whole other bunch of work on the vocals and getting it right and getting just the patterns and the rhythmic moments and just trying to create just like a mind, kind of like a little bit of a miniature dog on the string. For those that are listening, there's a puppy.
He's a puppy.
It's ruining my serious face.
Hey, puppy.
It's our fourth co-host. Yeah.
Ruining my metal face.
We can't do a metalcore episode, even though we've been dancing around it for the entire episode, without discussing Northeast and SoCo metalcore. That's got to come up a little bit, doesn't it?
Can you clarify?
I don't know. Like the divisions?
Well, no, as far as like whenever it was really starting to get popular with like Killswitch Engage and Atreyu and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The Dark Ages. The
Dark Ages, as Dan likes to call it. But I mean that has to be discussed to a certain extent because that's part of metalcore.
Yeah, it is. And Bullet for My Valentine and all that. But I've never, to be honest with you, never once listened to any of their records through.
To any of them?
I mean, I've heard their music, but I've never listened to them all the way through.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm that not into that style.
Oh, gotcha.
No, I feel you. Because, for me, metalcore is, I tend to lean more on the chaotic side of it. And,
and that's not radio-friendly, so that's not the stuff that's going to be well-known.
Anything that's radio-friendly, I'm kind of snooze. Sorry. I mean, but if you like it, that's great. I just, that's where I'm at. If you were looking for an opinion, I don't, maybe that's what you maybe you didn't want an opinion.
I don't know. Atreyu's great for, whenever you've had a few too many beers and you feel like you're, like me and you can't sing, and you're like, I'm going to do karaoke.
Well, see, I just karaoke to the screams. You know,
and I act like I'm Brandon Saller, and I'll do the clean vocals.
No, I do all. Yeah, like, and it's weird too. I had a lady. I was like pulled up to a stoplight when I was on my way over here, and I was screaming along to track 3 on your guys' record, and I was like,
nice.
You know, and this lady just kind of gives me this weird look because like I was trying to like go deep, you know, like because I tend to scream in a little bit higher register than that, you know. So like, yeah, so I was like really getting down in there, you know, like, and brother, you know, like, and,
just listen to the track I sent you guys. You'll understand.
Oh, you sent them a track?
Yes.
What did you send them?
Oh shit! Thank God I don't have any recorded materials.
Please tell me it was one. Yeah, he uses my past against me a lot. It's probably illegal to do that, right?
Isn't that called blackmail?
Lyrics, which I'm impressed you've learned them already.
Yeah, no, I have. That was like I really like that. And I because I'm the guy that sits down and listens to a record and reads the lyrics along with it.
Yeah, same.
And you guys. I mean, your record's only like 12 minutes long, so like I've been able to listen to it several times, you know, and
on the drive down.
On the drive down, yeah, I got like 3. Yeah, because our studio is like a half hour away from my house.
Same here.
And my sleeping children, yeah. So
interjection. So, just a question about you said you listened to the album several times. Do you skip the bonus track?
Well, I didn't even know the bonus track existed because, like I said, I just downloaded the MP3s today. Because I don't care about that. Because I predominantly listen to my vinyl.
It's basically the sound of a pizza box.
Yeah.
And just.
Well, I think I said something along the lines of. Like, yeah, there's 4 songs, but there's only 3 songs.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's not fair.
It's basically true. Yeah. I mean, what that is something that we wrote. Christian actually wrote it. I helped produce it, record it.
Okay.
But we use that live, and so we just thought it would fitting. Like, we always end our show with that. And just as a contrast, like, it's an ambient piece. And it's a total contrast to what we sound like. And so we thought it would be a nice... Like, if we done a full length, we might have 3 of those breaking up the record.
Totally.
You know what I mean? But... So, you know, it's just a little bonus. I've had some friends that absolutely love it, and they enjoy it. So we figured, hey, we'll put it on there.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it enough yet to comment. But, yeah, it's... But yeah, there's nothing like beautiful on the record as far as like the 3 main songs go, and I love that about it, that it's acidic and, you know, like angry sounding.
It will corrode your player.
Absolutely.
It will. That's a good way to describe it.
I wanted to ask you guys, because I forgot to ask this last podcast we did. So I actually have, I don't even know if you know, but I actually have a vocal cameo.
Oh crap! I forgot to.
The song.
I forgot to credit you, man.
Yeah.
I forgot to write it in the liner notes.
I wouldn't credit me.
Oh frick!
Okay.
I forgot to put it in there, but Christian actually does vocals on track 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
For one line.
One line. It's they speak in subtleties.
Yeah.
Okay. I will listen to that and
trivia for the listener at home.
Comment as soon as
I should play that right about now.
Play that exact clip
right now.
There you
starting
go. There you go.
Like in the actual podcast, they speak in subtleties.
No, we will.
Christian, that was pretty good, man. I'm telling you.
Oh, dude, thanks. Dude.
Scream. He can scream. He's never really done it in a band or anything, but he can do it. He did it in the studio. So, I was like, dude, let's throw a mic up, and so he did it right there.
What's funny is I have the same mentality about screaming as I do with singing in general. Gosh, when your favorite thing is English and you can't think of words.
Can't has a talk.
I basically believe the way you should sing and scream is the way that you speak, just with more emphasis or air, right?
Okay.
So guys who scream and rip out their vocal cords basically are screaming the wrong way. Or they're screaming, they're doing 300 shows a year. So
if you're doing it the right way, you can play as many shows a year as you want.
That's right. Exactly. No, seriously,
because a lot of those vocalists take lessons for that.
Yeah, one of the healthiest ways you can scream is you just have some saliva or water at the back of your throat and you breathe out, and then once you get that mastered, that vibration, because it's not supposed to be the vibration of your vocal cords. That's how you tear things. It's supposed to be a vibration of surface tension in the back of your throat.
I got a on how you should scream.
What is that?
Oh, dude, I was just gonna bring that up. The Melissa Cross.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
I was just gonna bring that up because like
so
every
this
time
is the Zen of Screaming by Melissa Krause. She's a vocal teacher in California.
Nice.
You would love this.
That's trash.
Yeah.
Literally any vocalist could benefit from that.
Well,
if you want to learn how to scream, have kids.
I thought you were gonna plug that. Never mind.
It just plugged it. Double plug. I was going to compliment Reid because I don't know everything about metal and vocal performances because I'm just.
Oh, you're a drummer.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I really do believe that, and I tell Reid this all the time. Like, I think he's one of the most genuine and real sounding metal vocalists out there that I've heard in a long time.
No, I appreciate.
And I don't have the biggest sampling, but a lot of times I hear a guy scream, and I'm just like,
you're
putting on airs a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with inflections and putting on vocal performances, but there's something to be said with someone who literally, if you asked him to say the word and then scream the word, and it'd be almost the same.
Yeah.
There's something very genuine about that, and I love it. It sounds less like a vocal performance and more like guys screaming on a front line and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I want to thank you, by the way. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I have my favorite vocalists over the years. Obviously I'm a big fan of, I already said Coalesce, and a big fan of the Dave from Botch. Or wait a minute, is it Dave? Yeah, I think it's Dave.
Frank.
Great delivery, great sound. Frank again.
Oh, Frank.
But like,
damn it, Frank.
So what I do not want to sound like is
David Frank.
Now I like
sounds like Frank.
I like the band.
Frank.
I gotta be clear. I like the band, and I think they're very really good. But the sound of the vocals, Curl Up and Die. You guys ever listen to Curl Up and Die?
I have not.
Not okay. Well, it's like Converge, except for less legible.
Is that possible?
Yeah,
that's rough.
Exactly. So literally look up anything by Curl Up and Die right now, and it's just so funny because
it'll probably end up on the episode.
There's not a single word that's legible, and so and I love the music. Don't get me wrong, I think it's great. I just can't understand anything. So
welcome to my line, the part that I don't like, the part where I say, yeah, that's good grindcore or that's bad grindcore. It doesn't matter how many words you put on a piece of paper and shove that in your linear notes and say, these are the lyrics. If all you're doing is inhaling and vibrating your vocal cords, you're not actually saying anything.
Yeah.
Preach, brother.
If you're just going blah 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 blah.
Here's my favorite.
Oh yeah, the pig squeals, man. Don't get me started.
Yeah.
Getting stockyard music.
I mean, I can't remember the band, but you handed me a band one time and said, no, the lyrics actually are oink, oink, oink. And I said, really? And then I pull it up and it's like, okay, well, at least they didn't say they were saying something.
Yeah. They're not lying.
They're not a joke. They're not a serious band. They're a joke band. Probably,
yeah. I remember the first time I heard the pig scream was on Cold Chamber.
Oh, track 13, Pig.
Yeah, Pig.
Cold Chamber.
And
I've never heard of that band.
Cold Chamber?
Yeah, they the lead singer then started Devil Driver afterwards.
So what did you guys think of when metalcore kind of started getting heavy again? Because there was a transition. See, there's a lot of weird stuff that went on. Obviously, yeah, you had your Adderley Dyings, you had your Killswitch Engages, you had Bullet for My Valentine, bands like that. Where guys like me and you were gonna say, well, that's not really metalcore, or it's not #it's not my metalcore, so we can get into all that, but it's interesting because there were all those mainstream bands, but there was still a lot of good stuff going on underground that just wasn't really getting anywhere. And I kind of there was a point in my life where I switched from the solid state bands to the Face Down Records bands.
Uh-huh.
And I got really into kind of
Face Down. Yeah.
Kind of the more hardcore based side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really into bands like Point of Recognition, Seventh Star, bands
so the older catalog. Got it.
Yeah. And even some of the early Symphony In Peril.
Dude, that's great stuff.
Yeah, and it's really sloppy and kind of shitty sounding, but it's great.
Yeah, I actually went back and listened to that first Symphony In Peril recently, and I was just man, this really didn't it's still good sounding. As far as
it didn't age well.
I don't know. It didn't age. It didn't sound like I remembered it sounding.
Yeah, it sounded a lot better when I was younger, but now it's one of those weird things where like, because I love Sean Jonas as a singer.
Dude,
I liked him in Zao. I like him now, but like,
I think he's got a phenomenal voice.
Yeah, and like it's one of those weird things where like I was watching just like 2 nights ago. I had a sleeping baby on my chest, and I was watching.
Isn't that the best?
Whose baby was it?
Mine.
Oh,
good.
Just one that I found at the supermarket. But yeah, we're sleeping. Well, he just got out of the hospital. He was in the hospital he was hospitalized for like 10 days. So it's like the first time I got to spend some time with him after that. And
I'm glad he's better. That's great.
Yeah, it was cool. But yeah, so he's sleeping on me, and I'm watching the 2004 Face Down Records Face Down Fest DVD.
Dude, I have that.
Yeah. Well, obviously I do too, but yeah, like but yeah,
you should have just said it. I do too.
I was watching that, and I was watching all these bands, and I loved it. They had, stuff like Shockwave on there, and
dude, I was gonna bring them up, man.
Yeah, like 121. Yeah, dude, and Transformers references. Like it's amazing.
Autobots.
Yeah,
I did not know what to think of that. I was kind of cringing a little bit.
It's gimmicky as all hell, but it's great in its own cheesy kind of way. It's the same reason I like stuff like Striper. It's just super cheesy, and I love it.
Totally. By intention. Yeah.
Absolutely. So like I'm watching that DVD, and Symphony In Peril comes on and does like a 3-song set. And like I'm not even kidding. These guys are like playing these like parts, and they're playing sloppy as hell. One of the guitarists' guitar is completely out of tune. Man. Like I'm watching him literally stop the song for like 3 audible seconds and then go into the next part, all within one song.
No way.
And I'm like, how did I not notice this before? Like, it's like, I obviously I'm like an old guy now, so like I noticed stuff like that, but like it was so weird. Like I was like, man, all these bands I thought were great weren't, and it was so funny to me to see that.
There's something still listenable, about them.
I love that record. I still love that record. That first Symphony In Peril record. I still love it. And I admit that it has flaws, and that it really sounds like what it kind of is. In that, like Sean Jonas, seminal hardcore vocalist from back in the day, it becomes a youth pastor, and it's clear that like the kids that are in the band are like 18, 19, and like they're probably kids from his youth group.
And it was right after Bless the Martyr came out, and it was very similar.
Yeah. And I remember reading a review. I used to read CD reviews on this website called godcore.com back in the day, and they had said in their CD review that if this record had come out 3 years before, it would have been as big as Norma Jean. And then there was another band called like Nodes of Ronvier or Ronvier.
They're a local-ish band to us. They're South Dakota.
And I remember their first 2 records were really good. And so it's kind of funny that all these bands were going on at that time when we're all kind of sitting over there shitting on all the stuff that's like really popular. But like these bands over on Face Down are doing what Solid State was doing 5 years ago, and so you check out Face Down now, and it's almost like indistinguishable from Solid State. But like,
yeah, it is a little bit, I suppose. But
like I remember seeing like like Seventh Star and like NIV. I was like a really big No Innocent Victim fan because like if you want to talk about like sincere lyrics and stuff, they were kind of the cream of the crop of that, and they were playing like kind of the older style of hardcore. And then there was like Disciple or X-Disciple XAD, like bands like that.
I was 3-piece.
I was like really into all that stuff.
Totally.
And to me that kind of kept metalcore going for me for a long time.
So that was a long question, So what I mean is, was it like, because you were asking us where we went with that whole?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No. I was just trying to like circle back around and like make sure that I answered that, because I don't think we. So you were talking to me. You were talking about, kind of like what happened and like your history with it, and then we just kind of accidentally started talking about Symphony In Peril.
Yeah, sorry.
No. I don't apologize. That's not why I brought that up that way. I was trying to hop in here with you on this. But for us, like, we got together, we formed this thing in 2010, and we kind of wanted to do this thing that is opposite of what you normally do. Normally, you hurry up and write 3 songs or 4, and you go out, and maybe one's a cover song, and you go out and hurry up and start playing shows. But we did the opposite. We wanted to
spend time like actually forming some sort of musical synergy, really just learn how to write together. And so we kind of tuned our ears, turned our ears off to what's going on in the current state of like metalcore or whatever with like Code Orange and all that, and just kind of didn't listen to it, didn't really, because we wanted to make our own thing and make our own sound and make a new heavy. And you can't do that if you've got your ear to the ground. And so that's kind of what our approach was and has been. And now, just as of 2017, we are like actually, getting this stuff out there. And I guess, we've kind of just not really been, we're aware of it, I guess, but we're not like listening and absorbing and drawing from anything that is within the last like probably decade.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of where like, we're very much roots based, but we also like when me and I almost called you Colt.
I'll be a Colt.
When me and Christian got, together, it was really cool because I was happy to find out he wasn't aware of a lot of the bands that I was, because
he wasn't spoiled.
When he would hear the riffs that I'm writing, he would come up with his own thing, which is magic. And it was just, we were able to create something truly new. And I've always been very intentional to make sure, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that there's no way I'm lifting a riff or I'm borrowing anything, because I have this thing with purity and like being, a purist about it and being absolutely true to vision. I think early, before I was in bands, I was really into music, and I kind of just, there was a lot of like hate thrown around to bands who would be ripoffs. So I kind of really adapted that and just really felt the same way, actually. And so I've always, we've always just been very intentional not to do that. So if you find something in our music, you tell me, and I'll probably
I am equally as bad. I will throw a song out if I come across one riff for even a second that sounds like a song that I have on my CD shelf.
Well, we're on the same page, man. We're definitely kindred with that.
It is a musical nitpick. I'm like, nope, that sounds like insert name of band. And I only recently got to the point where I just threw it out and said, look, if I write it and I can't tell you who I ripped off in the first 10 seconds of playing it, I'm just going to go with it. I did some projects last year with a buddy of mine where he threw at me and said, dude, that totally sounds like Money by Pink Floyd. And I said, well, then it's going to sell a shit ton of copies.
Nice.
Because I didn't care anymore, because I spent a lot of time on my own writing stuff that just, I spent too much time trying to make sure it didn't sound like something that I had already heard.
Yeah.
I just didn't care anymore. I was like, well, fuck it.
Yeah, and the other thing you got to keep in mind is, recorded music has been around for a while now. The likelihood that you're going to end up sounding like something else for a few seconds,
it's rather high.
Is rather high, because the sheer volume of recorded music is insane at this point in time, and it's only going to go up. And I think that's part of the reason. I mean, everybody I think it's on this podcast agrees that we like the analog. We like what sounds quote unquote real. But I think that's and I'm hoping things eventually go back to that for popular music. But I think part of the reason why for some portions of popular music, especially with my kids, I got a 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, and so they're looking at things from a different perspective than we are, and they grew up in the digital age. Mm-hmm. So analog is a completely foreign material to them. Everything is digital. It's not unusual that their music is also digital.
And I was it's so funny that you say that. I had this conversation about a week ago with some of my friends, how music used to be a reason to come together. It used to be the actual event itself, right? You would go to concert hall and there would be a big name band, and it would be like everyone would stop. There would be no one had cell phones or iPhones at the time, so there wouldn't be any of it was just everyone was fixated on the thing.
Right.
and it would even be rude to talk, even for slightly loud music, and so now music isn't seen, unfortunately, in the mainstream anymore as a way to even convey ideas. It's basically like a background to your life. People are so, especially the younger generation, they're so oversaturated with music, with their lifestyle being, oh, this is for me, this is my song today,
and everything's free too.
Everything's free, everything's simple, and so the reason why I think it has gone this way, in almost all genres of the music being popular, all things being equal, is that they want simpler things. They just, the general populace, they want simple things. They don't want to have to work very hard for entertainment.
Yeah, they don't have to think.
Yeah, it's really what it is, and to a certain point, I really understand that. I understand, it can be exhausting to try to interpret messages and figure out meaning and listen to stories. But at the end of the day, people are storytellers. And I think if you stray away from that storytelling in any way, just because it's more convenient for you, I think you're doing things a lot of disservice, especially when it comes to the heavier scene. Because I think half the message is the way it's presented, not even the fact that it's presented at all, but the way it's presented. And so I'm actually grateful a little bit, the fact that mainstream, hardcore metalcore kind of became not so great to listen to, because I think it allowed people on the fringes to take up a bit of a different banner, and there's always going to be ebb and flow of professionalism versus excellence, and I think perfect is the way you measure your shortcomings, and excellence is the way you measure what you've done well. And I think we have excellent music now coming up, and right now in the mainstream we have perfect music, and I think people are honestly tired of perfection. I think people are coming out of that. They don't really like that because it reminds them of something that isn't real. I think it's artificial. And so I think I'm actually kind of grateful for that, because it gave us a footing.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think it's also the same reason why vinyl is starting to come back.
Totally.
Yeah, that's why we did ours on physical copy, and we weren't going to do CD, because if you want CD, you might as well do digital. Right. In my opinion, I know that according to Nuclear Blast, they still sell a ton of CDs, but we just wanted to do vinyl because we wanted to, and I personally collect vinyl too, and anyway, yeah, I forgot what I interjected.
Well, digital music just got to the point recently where it actually made sense to not put it on CD and just sell lossless, whether it be Apple lossless or FLAC, but sell lossless versions of the songs. They sound better than the CD.
Yep.
And it only recently got to that point.
Right, exactly.
Bandcamp's great for that.
Yeah, and we have the bandwidth to support it.
Yeah. I have an entire tree of CDs that I haven't even listened to, just because it's it's not. I'm not going to say it's a dead medium, because I don't think it is, but I certainly think it's dying.
For you personally, it is.
Yeah, for me personally, it's dying, because again, I know Reid talked about how he didn't really put his ear to the ground when it came to inspiration. I was the same way, but basically with all music. I actually took a music fast when I was in high school, from freshman year in high school all the way up till halfway through my college years.
Wow.
I basically didn't listen to music aside from 3 or 4 bands, and the rest of the time it was me listening to, sorry, I'm going to pause for a second. I went to Nebraska Christian College, which was a music school, and so I basically the most music I listened to was music I made myself. I played with groups. I sung in gospel choir. We went around and did worship things at different churches, and went all over the country. So the majority of the music I listened to was the music I was writing for myself, and so. And honestly, seems weird to me to have done it any other way. There's certainly no judgment to listening to everything under the sun. And I actually wish I would have, because there's many times where we have conversations like this, and half of the names you guys said tonight, I'm just like, who?
We got you covered. Just go back and listen to the other episodes.
Yeah. But it's, and I I think I actually had an unhealthy outlook at it at the beginning of my high school, because I was like, well, since everything sucks, I'm not going to listen to it. And I'm like, well, there's some great stuff in there. Even the stuff that isn't as good, there's some great stuff in there. And I think I neglected a lot of really cool opportunities. So now that I'm going back and I'm starting to dive into more of some of the stuff that's even been said to be slightly good, I'm finding a lot more creativity there than I did before.
Well, see, there's an unhealthy version of that a lot of people will say to you, especially when you're a teenager, which is, well, how do you know you don't like it if you don't try it? My version of that is you have to watch the bad horror movie to appreciate the good horror movie.
True.
And I don't think you have to try something to know you don't like it or to know it's a bad idea.
Right.
But when it's October and Netflix is saturated with bad horror movies, absolutely watch as many of those as you possibly can, because that good one that you find, that's the jewel. And the same is true for music. If it's on the radio and you hate it, great. But you should still listen to it, at least to get a barometer for what is bad or what you don't like. Because if you shun all of it, you end up in a mindset where you're still listening to the same band that you've been listening to for 20 years, and that's when you become the old man. Well, back in my day...
And I've known you that whole time, at least for the last almost decade, right?
Yeah.
So I think you've listened to a few things, here and there. I'm not, I don't think you turned it off, did you?
No, I'm saying when I was in high school.
Oh, okay.
High school to college is when.
Okay.
I fixed myself. I got my brain right. When I got into college, I was just like.
Okay, so it was before we had made the.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that was an incorrect attitude that I had. Yeah, fight.
Clear.
I'm messing.
Clarification on the timeline here.
Yeah. No, because I really do think it actually helped me in some ways, because it made me be creative as opposed to parroting what I heard. But then at the same time, I found out what I liked, and that fast kind of helped that in some way, because then I was like, oh, okay, so now I know how to target myself. But I think at the end of the day, if I could choose to do it again, I would choose to listen to everything that there was, because I did. Almost all of my life, I listened to everything there was, almost every genre. And so it allowed me to be a more rounded out musician in the way that I kind of approach things musically. But, I would rather have picked a camp than no camp at all, because I think it felt kind of isolated at the end there. So I'm glad I came out of the music drought and stepped into the fun.
There you go.
Welcome. You're actually hitting on
Join us.
Vast majority of this is a metal podcast, but I always try to listen to everything. I mean,
polka. You listen to polka?
Yeah, Weird Al, man.
Totally.
Okay.
Weird Al.
Power of Power on the way over here, so
Weird Al's got polka, so yeah, he counts. But yeah, I mean, I love discovering new things, and I actually thoroughly enjoy the Pandora and Spotify and things like Netflix with their weird algorithms that will find the band that hasn't had even hasn't had 1,000 plays, and you listen to it and you're like, wow, this is what everybody else is missing. This is
totally
unbelievable. And I've found so many bands that way that now I love, that I sing their praises, because I don't know anybody else in the Midwest that listens to them, other than maybe the torturing that I do of Dan and Joe here. I mean, that's about the only other people that might listen to it, or my kids when they're stuck in the car.
So, funny story about those algorithms, Jeff. In the infancy of Pandora, you could search for a band called End of Destiny, and you would find a band called End of Destiny, and it would play songs similar to End of Destiny that you would like, and it almost always played Death Clock.
Yeah, every time our band came on Pandora, it would switch to Death Clock.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I know.
It's a conspiracy.
Joke metal.
Against you guys specifically.
Yeah, it was somebody's
Clock
joke.
paid a premium to hijack any
right, yeah.
any bands that had certain words in their name.
Destiny.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to call it at this point, though, because we're at like 180 minutes. And
it's icing outside.
Poor Joe's going to have to edit this. So
we are going to cut out
I got a couple weeks.
Because you think there's 5 of us here. There's 5 of us. That magnifies. We talked for a trap for an hour and 25 minutes, and there was only 3 of us.
Right.
So, it just doubles up a little bit.
We were rather expedient at the end there.
Travis counts as 2 people. Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
Well, give it a couple months, and you guys are going to have to make a triumphant return because this was really fucking good.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, man, it's a great time.
We may not have stayed on topic, but I think it's going to be an interesting conversation to listen back to.
We do meander, but that's kind of that's human nature. So we do appreciate you guys coming on. It was a blast.
Yeah, and I would say that if people want to check us out, just go to anewheavy.com.
Absolutely.
We're on Instagram at anewheavy. Literally made it simple.
Perfect.
And we are about to drop a music video, so stay tuned for that too.
Yeah, and the record was great, man. You guys still have copies of that? To sell,
we
right?
did a limited press at 250. 7-inch on vinyl, transparent.
How many do we have left?
Transparent clear. I don't know the exact number, but
it's definitely not 250.
No, yeah, we sold quite a few.
At least one.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to make a purchase.
One guy did.
Evening.
Yeah,
This asshole, he has a podcast.
Yeah, right. Well, no, I just liked it. When I bought that record, I wasn't like thinking like I should ask him to be on my podcast. Like I just. For whatever reason, I've been doing this for a year now, and I still don't like think to do that all the time. And so I was really thankful that you guys did it for me. And
totally,
and
you took the first step by ordering our record and adding me on Twitter.
Yeah, man.
Right. Well, it was a big deal for me, not to go back into what we were talking about, but I basically, it was a big deal because like I was working a lot, so like
a moment for your life.
Well,
right?
yeah, well, it was a big deal because like I knew the record was coming in the mail. It may have been in my house, it may not have been yet, and I had to work all these crazy hours or whatever. And I remember the morning it came, and I didn't listen to it right away because I had worked 23, 24 hours straight at that point, and so I got home, and I remember my wife's like, hey, you got a package? I was like, oh, sweet, I know what this is, And so I opened it, I looked at it, and I read the lyrics, and then I just fell asleep and slept for like 8 or 9 hours. And then it wasn't until like 10 o'clock that night, because this was like 6:30 in the morning, so I guess the package had come the day before. And so I slept for like 8 or 9 hours, and then I woke up and listened to the songs and read the lyrics and everything. But it was cool because again, it was like an event. It would have been really easy whenever I first heard of you guys to pull it up on my Google Music, and download it and listen to it. But like I would have
it on there.
Right. No, I know, that's what I mean. Like I couldn't so like listening to it, if I'd have been listening to it while I was working those shifts or whatever, I would have been doing it while I was working, and it would have been just that. It would have been a background. Yep. So it wouldn't have had the impact on me that it did have.
Yeah.
If it had been delivered in any other format.
Exactly what we had hoped for people that find us, and hopefully a lot more people find us too. Just with having guest vocals, you get extra name recognition, which is a given. These are actually relationships we've built too. It's not just like we're not just doing it for name drop or taking advantage of them. These are like people that we've been in contact with for over a decade for Matt, and about a decade for Sean, and I'd say DJ's the more recent one. He's a couple years. But yeah, we're gonna put some stuff out there and get some ads going, and hopefully people will dig it.
Very cool. You can look out for. We have a blog where I do CD reviews whenever I feel like it, and
we would love to have some.
Yeah,
words
within the next probably within the next couple of weeks, I'll probably have a review up for you to read. So that'll be something that you can share around and stuff like that. I mean, unless you read it and you're like, oh wow, he was really nice on the podcast, but he was not nice on this record. No, but I mean, so far where I'm at, I don't think I'm going to be like shitting all over it, so you should be good. Unless I hear that one other band that it sounds exactly like. No, well, one thing that we do at the end of our episodes usually is we do like an album of the week. So what have you guys been listening to this week specifically?
Well, let me pull up my Apple Music. I don't use it that often, but I sometimes just try to like find stuff.
I love that. We have that whole discussion about it. It's, let me pull up my.
Yeah. See, I already got mine
we
pulled
do the
up.
same
I'm
thing,
prepared.
man. Dude, a show like ours wouldn't be possible without services like that. It's not like I have every record that's ever come out, you know, like.
My wife actually got it out of necessity, so I kind of use it on the side like a little bit. Like, you know, I guess I.
We can go first if you need some.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, Joe, what do you got?
If you volunteer to go first, that means you go first.
Okay.
It's all you, buddy.
Sworn to a great. All right.
Volunteer. What do you got, Jeff?
Sworn to a great divide by soil work. I listen to that a lot.
Nice.
Dan, what about you?
Not to be cheesy, but I've been listening to Ox by Coalesce.
Oh, it's a great record.
It really is.
After listening to the Sean podcast, I actually popped it out too.
That was me too. That's what I was like. I haven't listened to Ox in forever, you know. So like, I pulled it up and been listening to it pretty steady ever since then.
Yeah, I've kind of been doing like.
Ooh. Okay, here we go. I forgot about this. I was listening to this for about 3 days last week. I just came from a big drumming event.
Oh yeah.
And so I've been pretty dry on the music front because I've basically been having to like drum for like 8 hours straight, 3 or 4 days in a row.
Yikes.
Yeah, and a lot of it was like improv because it was like, you know, worship moments or whatever. And so, but who I was listening to the week before that was Johnny Lang.
Okay.
That it
He's
definitely
a phenomenal artist.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
hey, there you go. Either he's happy or he has to poop. Oh, they said he's happy.
Pulling his DVD out.
It could be both.
Oh,
There
okay. it
is. Come on now.
Thomas.
Yep, he's so good. And so I didn't rediscover him. I had listened to it a bunch of times, but then I forgot that he was that good, and so I just kind of moved along. I was like, yeah, he's great. And then like last year I remembered him. Just like, holy cow, I forgot how good he was. And so I just been listening to him off and on for the past month of just a bunch of different. And what's funny is, I know he's an amazing guitar player and a really great vocalist, but every drummer he's ever had on his albums has been, I think, what can be considered of that genre one of the most solid drumming in blues and really just the guitar leading, the drum mindset basically is just the most sincere, over the top, poppy, thick, groovy drums. And so I just get reminded of it, and I was just like, wow, this is so good.
So let's talk about extreme metal drummers for 1 minute.
Yeah.
Why is Gene Hoglan the only drummer who has ever just come right out and say, so part of the reason I can play fast is these leg weights? Why is he the only guy?
I don't know, but I definitely don't use them. But
I absolutely do when I practice, because you warm up with the weights, you take off the 5 pounds, and now you can fly.
Okay, now here's the thing. I actually already have that in my pedals. I use PDP pedals, PDP double kick, very cheap. And I've got my drum kit.
Cheap and they weigh a lot.
Yeah, they're cheap and they weigh a lot. And then I've got
5000. I'm coming after you.
That's fine. You can. Hey, send me an endorsement. I got you, DW. I'm your guy. I'll do it. Hey. Wait. I basically have one of the worst tunings ever for my kick drum in terms of helpfulness for me, but it sounds really good.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm hitting into a paper bag with these weighted kick pedals, and so if I wore ankle weights, I don't know that I could bring the beater back. But I'm gonna start training with them because you said so. I believe in.
There you go.
Well, that was one of those things that I always noticed was these guys. I would see these little tidbits, like Chad Sexton would be warming up backstage, and it would look like he was wearing really baggy sweatpants.
Weird sock shoe things.
And I couldn't figure it out. And then one day it just popped up with Gene Hoglan, like, so here's leg weights. I use these. All your favorite drummers use these. And if you ask them about it and they say, I don't know what you're talking about, they're lying to you.
That's weird. Why would they lie? I don't know why they would lie. That's
nobody talked about it. And I remember Thomas Lang, even on this DVD.
Yeah.
I read an interview with the guy that helped with the filming, and he came right out and said, I don't know why he didn't talk about leg weights, because he was warming up with them while we were getting ready to film that DVD. And when you watch his feet, you can kind of tell.
Yeah, like
he's warmed up a little bit.
Like he's stepping upstairs, but there's always one more step that he's expecting.
Right.
He's still fucking amazing, though.
Oh, he's amazing. He's a machine.
Well, I've been listening to my go-to, I just almost chewed out a salesman while I was working, so I've been listening to Between the Buried and Me, Colors.
BT Bam, yeah.
Good band.
You have a bad moment, and you just reach for the colors, just in go the headphones, and the piano drops, and all right, I'm all right today.
See, I would see them on like a yearly basis at the venue I would go to in Omaha when I was like 19. That was like 2003 and 4.
So you were around when the first record came out.
Yeah. I was like, I had like one of the first like shirts with like the rhino on the back of it with like, I don't know why that matters, but they were like the band, man, like coming through, like,
yeah,
for like the extreme experimental like metal stuff, like they were it.
So I think The Last Jedi might have even been shorter than this podcast.
Oh yeah.
Jeff, can you give me an official time on that?
No.
Our show.
Normally I can. I'm the resident Star Wars nerd.
Our show's 2 hours and 30 minutes over here.
It was 2:20, I think.
2:20.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long Last Jedi was, but
Yeah. It's all good, man. I really
love it.
Yeah, this was fun. I mean, I don't care that it was off topic at all. Like, it's too much fun.
Well, please edit it down, you know.
We will. Don't worry.
I don't think that the podcast is 2 hours long will get much listen, but
you'd be surprised.
Maybe.
The one we did with Scott from Zao for that was over 3.5 hours was one of the most downloaded episodes we did.
Totally. I can see it, man.
Huh.
Could have just been the name drop of Zao, but I don't know. Like, it was pretty cool.
Honestly, if I saw a video of 3 hours and I started listening and I heard this much that we were talking about, I'd stay for the whole thing. I'd be like, oh, they're talking about so many things.
I appreciate that.
And on that note, this has been episode 51 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion, and please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks. Tetelestai can be found at anewheavy.com. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Wow.
My pleasure.